hey, when do I need to be ready to go? Well, we thought we had about 6 minutes of time. And in 6 minutes in radio, that's a long time.
That's forever.
And now we will be talking plenty of Chiefs. We'll get to KU State.
Yeah, we got a lot to get to today. We were just a little bit unprepared for the start.
Correct.
So in many ways, we are like the Kansas City Chiefs today.
And so hit us up on our text line. Let us know your thoughts. 785-272-9429. Outside of Topeka, very easy to get to. Also, check us out on YouTube. Go to youtube.com. Type in 580 Sports Talk, and you can subscribe. Check us out. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'll hear from Matt Derrick for a little therapy session maybe today. Cooper Beebe will join us. We'll talk all things K-State. We'll talk KU Illinois. They play tonight. I can't stand it. I am not prepared for that. K-State in action. So a lot to get to on this edition of 580 Sports Talk.
We'll get to talk to a former boss of mine today. 2:35. Jeremy Werner going to join us from 24/7 Sports.
All things Illinois.
Former host of the Tay and Jay show on ESPN Radio Champaign, Illinois, which is where I interned for my senior year of college.
There we go.
Of my two bosses in my professional life, they will both be on the air with us at 2:35.
It'll still turn into just we're going to talk about what Brendan his shortcomings are. That's what we're going to talk about.
We only got about 20 minutes for the segment, guys.
We only have 3.5 hours.
Speaking of shortcomings, that would be the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers.
We really are going to do this all day.
The Chiefs lost yesterday, and I can tell you this: the reaction is what I expected, and it is as though the world is coming to an end.
Do we need to dust this off for today?
No, we don't. No, because I am going to actually, as much as
Jumper by Third Eye Blind for those wondering at home.
I am going to actually
fingers itching.
Be on the calm side of this. Maybe you guys are not, but I'm going to be on the more calm side of this. There are a lot of people freaking out about, this is what Brett Veach gets for not investing in wide receivers. This is what the Chiefs season is going to look like if Travis Kelce goes down. This is the future for the Chiefs. I am going to tell you this, that it was an abysmal performance by the Chiefs wide receiving core. It was not good, to the tune where now jokes are being made, and hard to argue that if Kadarius Toney just fell down at the line of scrimmage every single play in the game last night, the Chiefs would have been better off. Which, hard to argue, but I am not going to tell you at this moment of time, after one game on September the 8th, that I am going to go, oh my goodness, the world's falling apart. No, I am going to be Kevin Bacon saying, remain calm, all is well. And the reason why I say that is, one, the Chiefs lost by 1 point, despite the offense being a disaster yesterday. The Chiefs defense, which we'll get to in just a little bit, gave up just 14 points to an offense that was a juggernaut at the end of the year, and did so without one of the five best defensive players in the NFL. That's why I'm not here to go push the panic button. I am not, because it is one game and one time. To me, is not something to freak out. If the Kansas City Chiefs can't catch a pass, run into each other left and right, Travis Kelce doesn't go, and they do this against the Jags or the Bears or the Jets, then I will come on this radio station and this show and tell you flatly, it is now a problem. It is a problem. I don't know if Kadarius Toney all of a sudden has the yips and he's Chuck Knobloch trying to throw it to first base. I don't know if he is like you and me, Dan, when we stand over a 5-footer and we miss our first 5-foot putt. Now it is in our heads and we're going to miss every one of them. It's to be determined yet. I'm not going to go there, because if you just take one of the drop passes, one of the poor throws of the Kansas City Chiefs that they had, because Mahomes was not excellent. There's a lot of missed meshes, one that Tony got deflected by Jack Campbell. He's got to settle much, much earlier, but he kept drifting. It's not as if I don't understand what went down in the game yesterday. I have been the ones to tell you, I don't know how a wide receiver drops a football with the gloves that they got nowadays, because it is stickier than Stickum that was way back in the day that Fred Biletnikoff would just drub all over his hands. But it's one game, and if only one pass was caught by Kadarius Toney, if Sky Moore were able somehow, and actually that's maybe more of a concern to me, if Sky Moore ran 31 routes yesterday, had 4 targets, had 1 reception, and that didn't count. That is more of a concern than Kadarius Toney's drops and the Chiefs' offense without Travis Kelce. That is why I am not burn it all to the ground. Brett Veach, you don't know anything. Drops happens unless they happen very, very frequently. One loss is not going to derail the Kansas City Chiefs. And in fact, Brendan, you told me this last year, if you're going to lose to a team in the NFC, because that loss doesn't affect you as much as, say, the Bills or the Jaguars, or even a team that you don't play in, like the Ravens. If you have the same record and the Ravens lose an AFC game, the Chiefs lost an NFC game, who's better off? It is the Chiefs. I'm not trying to tell you that this isn't a dire concern. It is I'm going to wait a little bit before I push the panic button to go forward for the Kansas City Chiefs. How will Kadarius Toney react to this? How will Andy Reid react to this? We're going to talk more about the defense, which, it was awesome. I will get a little bit more than that. Andy Reid's decision-making, we will discuss that as well. Unfortunately, as we've said so much more in this show before, hard to change your stripes. Tigers are tigers, okay? Cheetahs are cheetahs. It's hard to change your stripes. Would I like Andy Reid to do that? We'll go into more of that. But I'm not all burn it all to the ground. Wow. I think the Chiefs had a lot of mistakes in this game, and the Lions were able to overcome and capitalize on almost all of those. It was kind of a Murphy's Law, and if one pass just gets caught, the Chiefs win this football game. That's why I am not here to say, wow, the Chiefs are terrible. Holy cow, Travis Kelce's more important than Chris Jones. Patrick Mahomes is not that guy. The offense is a struggle. It's too early for me to get into that. And I think if you do, you need to calm down. It's a means to an end. The Chiefs' main goal is in the playoffs. Would we like to get them set up perfectly? Yes. They weren't going 15-1, 16-1. They're not going to go 15-2. They're probably going to end up going something like 13-4 would be my guess. I can see a couple losses, but as of now, this isn't panic time and, all the people on social media, what's Mike Evans doing? I'm not there yet. Calm down, all right? Calm down.
I'd go add that guy, by the way, if I could.
Yeah, we got an overreaction, proper reaction coming up a little later on next hour, and his name may come up.
I will say the reason I'm not especially worried, and I hate to give you the nerdiest answer possible, the basic way to put this, and we talked about this on our live reaction show last night, which, by the way, go check us out on YouTube, 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. Right now, one of the header videos, it's under the live tab, it's in the Chiefs playlist, all that. Our instant post-game show Dan and I did last night. A lot of people got involved in the comments. Appreciate you guys. A lot of good stuff we got to last night. Everything had to go wrong.
Yes.
Every single thing. All-time terrible performance by Kadarius Toney. Sky Moore was AWOL the entire night. The running game was totally ineffective in the sense that it was a non-factor. Like, they didn't use it darn near at all, especially in the second half. Drop passes everywhere. pick six off of a tip pass, and still, with plenty of time on the clock, the Chiefs had possession down by a single point with a chance to go down the field. Now, they didn't. They failed there, but they still had that opportunity despite everything else going wrong. That, to me, is a very unlikely outcome. If you played that game 10,000 times, that outcome happens, 5 to 10% of the time, maybe, that you end up in a situation where all of your receivers stink. Justin Watson led the Chiefs in yards per route run yesterday. He had 45 receiving yards for the game. Like, it's a complete throwaway, nothing game. And it's not nothing because all wins and losses count. I get that. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, you only get 17 of them. You know, there's not 162 like in baseball.
But if you're playing the probability game, the probability of that outcome, of having that many things go wrong all at the same time, it's just not, almost never is that going to happen again. If Kadarius Toney simply knocks the ball down as opposed to having it hit him right in the hands and pop up in the air like a baseball hitting a bag and popping up, if it just falls to the ground, the Chiefs probably win that game.
Yeah, shout out to Braden on the YouTube comments for making the exact same point. Yeah, Kadarius Toney, per Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus, had the worst PFF grade for a wide receiver in a single game since 2018. It is almost...
I want to know who is worse.
I know, right? It is almost impossible to have as negative an impact on your team's chances of winning than Kadarius Toney did last night. I went and did the math on this with the help of Pro Football Reference's win probability calculator. When the Chiefs took over after they get the big stop on 4th down and 2. By the way, big time shout out to the Chiefs defense for bowing up there, getting the stop on 4th and 2, blitzing into the short pass. It was a great call by Steve Spagnuolo. It was a super play by Justin Reed. The Chiefs did what they had to do. They got off the field. They gave the offense a chance to go down and win the game. And we have seen Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs win that exact game at least a dozen, if not 24 times.
And I thought it was yesterday.
We've seen that scenario so much. And Kadarius Toney drops the first down pass. Now, the Chiefs, the win probability for a team in the Chiefs' shoes, a 3.5-point favorite, down by 1, with 1st and 10 at their own 45, with 2.5 minutes to play in the 4th quarter. The win probability, with everything else being equal, just that game situation, teams win 55.6% of the time. They win more often than they lose in that situation. If Kadarius Toney catches that pass, and if you watch the replay of it, there was going to be some yak for Kadarius Toney. Like, it's not crazy to think he would have gotten into the red zone. But conservatively, let's say he picks up about 10 yards after the catch, and he's brought down at the 25-yard line of the Lions with about 2:20 to play and the clock moving, and a 1st and 10, and the 3.5-point favorite down by 1 with that ball and a fresh set of downs and that much time left in the 4th quarter, your win probability goes to nearly 72%. With the drop, with 2nd and 10, with 2:25 left, the win probability drops to 52%. So that play essentially took a 1 in 5 chance, a 20% chance for the Chiefs to win the game away. Just that one play. And we haven't even brought up the drop pass on 3rd down that leads to the Chiefs kicking a field goal to go up 17-14 instead of extending that drive and maybe going back up by a touchdown. And that's not mentioning the drop pass. Like, people were killing Mahomes for the throw to Toney that he dropped in the 4th quarter. Like, oh, it's a little behind him. Well, 2 things here. Number one, yeah, timing with your wide receivers is important. And maybe Mahomes' timing with Toney isn't quite precise considering Toney's practiced like 3 times. Maybe that is a bit of a kink in the machine there, but at the same time, the pass is on him. It might be a little behind, but he's not like falling down off balance.
I expect a high schooler to make that catch.
Yes, he's got to turn. The ball hits him in both hands.
If it hits you in the hands, you catch the ball.
That's general rule of thumb for pass catchers everywhere. If he makes that catch and he picks up about 10 yards of yak, it's like, again, all teams would have a 72% chance of winning. How much better do you feel about the Chiefs in that spot as the home team with Mahomes, with Harrison Butker? Like, they're winning that game if Toney makes that catch.
They probably kick the field goal with no time left on the clock. Like what they would probably do is run it a few times, force the Lions to use their timeouts, kick the field goal with no time left on the clock. Or they score a touchdown and the defense has to come on and hold their own. Like that's why I'm not freaking out, despite every single person on in my texting groups, and of course they're doing it also to just poke the bear a little bit because they're trying to get a reaction out of me. I've been around the block. I've I've seen 2 Super Bowl parades. If in all honesty, the Colts loss was more of a worrisome last year than this one was. I just need to see so much more like this to be worried. To be really, truly worried about the Kansas City Chiefs.
Here's the reason I think that people are like the reaction to this loss is maybe amplified relative to like if this game happens in week 3 or week 6 or week 11. It's week 1. So this is our first look. You know the old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a very good first impression for the 2023 Chiefs. They were sloppy. They were not on song. They were out of sync offensively. They had receivers running into each other on routes. They screwed up an easy mesh concept on that one Tony drop that should have been a first down and should have kept a really good drive clicking. They had a lot of mistakes. Mahomes was not at his imperious best. It was probably a B minus game for Mahomes, I would say, all things considered.
Like right
by
now,
his standards, which is probably like an A game for just about every other quarterback in the league.
Charles Robinson of Yahoo just tweeted this out. In the Lions' loss, the Chiefs learned what the offense looks like without the reliability and game-changing ability of Travis Kelce. That should shape some future decisions. You're basing everything off of one game. Like I and that's the one thing that I just can't get over. One single game. Do I agree a little bit with, hey, you know what? The Chiefs should now take a look at these next couple of games, see how it works. If the offense continues to struggle, then let's see it. But this is just, I think, clickbait, hot takes. Like, well, have a little nuance. Do you think Brett Veach right now is literally going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? That single year game right there to start the season is going to completely change how I operate. I'm going to do completely things different off of one game. Get out of here with that.
The other thing, too, that I think is interesting about last night is one thing that has beaten the Chiefs is teams playing against type. And we've seen examples of that in regular season games, but we've also really seen it in playoff games. Like the AFC Championship game loss to the Bengals, they went with the 2-high 3-man rush, which is something they didn't do hardly at all year. Mm-hmm. And the Chiefs couldn't find a solution in time, essentially. The Super Bowl that they lost to Tampa Bay, they faced a completely different defense, a Tampa Bay scheme than they saw in the first game. Tampa Bay brought a lot of rushers. They played a lot of man. In the Super Bowl, they played 2 high and they rushed 4 every down. And the reason they rushed 4 every down is because they knew they could win with 4 because the Chiefs offensive line was so bad. But they went against type. They went against what you would have seen on film. Typically, teams don't do that. Teams do what they do because that's what they drill. That's who they scout to and sign players to, is their scheme. But in week 1, sometimes you're seeing a team for the first time and they are a different team schematically than they are the year before. And the Detroit Lions, who ran the most man coverage of any team in the NFL last year, ran a whole lot of zone 2 high last night, ran different defensive fronts than they ran at any point last year. And that's a good way, if none of that stuff is on film, to jam up your passing game and jam up your running game, just throwing you a different look. And so I think the Chiefs were caught a little bit off guard in a way that maybe they haven't been in previous season openers against a team like this. That's a credit to Aaron Glenn and the Lions defensive staff, but it doesn't excuse just how sloppy everything looked. And that is so rare for the Chiefs. Like we talked about yesterday, they've been so good in openers that for them to be bad, because they were on offense, they were sloppy. They were bad on offense. For them to be bad from all the good the great that we've seen from them in season openers, that's what's startling. And I think that's what's genuinely concerning people who are inclined to be genuinely concerned today.
And I agree with that to a point, but I also look at it as the offense probably scores 30-some points if Kadarius Toney just catches a football. Like, they didn't look great, and yet they still weren't. Maybe the zone was a little bit different, but yet they still, if they just catch a foot. I feel like I'm Tweeter off of Varsity Blues when they say we're going to run, the hook and ladder play, and this is the one where Billy Bob is like, is this the one where, no, this is the one where you catch the ball. Oh my gosh, it's the football. Oh wow, look at it, just catch it. Tony catches the one crosshair that doesn't lead to that's literally 7 points for the other team. The other drives, they catch them. Like, if you just catch, Sky Moore even dropped the last 4th and 25 pass that hit him in the hands when he jumped up. Like, if you just catch the football, all of that we're talking about goes away. That's why I see people like, oh, this should change what they should do. They're going to completely go away from what seems to work. That's just way too reactionary to one game. That's how I look at this on the offense. I will change my tune if against Jacksonville they drop it and it looks bad. I will come on here Monday morning and I will tell you now, all right, once is a happenstance, second is a trend. How do they bounce back there? And if it continues, then I will say, all right, something's got to change.
But there's just not enough proof right now that's
no.
Because,
and I would figure like smart football guys out there would actually understand that.
Yeah, man, I couldn't do it last night. Like I like after games on Saturdays after a game, I'll go on. I'll read as much as I can. Game recaps, NFL Sundays, Thursday nights or Monday nights when the Chiefs or the Packers play. I'll read as much as I can. Last night, I couldn't do it. I had to pack it in and just go to bed because
some really bad takes out there
by smart people,
yes,
or at least people who are paid to cover the NFL and should do more than come up with the most like normie, uninformed opinions. And you can have an opinion. That's fine. You don't have to agree with me or with Jake or with Dan. That's fine.
No, some opinions are wrong. Some opinions are. The earth is flat. That's an opinion. No, that's wrong.
Well, that's not an opinion. That's just being
some
wrong.
people say, well, no, that's what I believe. Like, you're wrong. Like, there are some opinions that are wrong.
Okay. Well, all right.
I will die on that hill.
Good.
That's a good hill to die on. Yes.
That's good. I'll stick with football for now. My point
there are
being,
bad opinions.
You can be upset about this game and upset about certain things. I think Andy Reid needs to have his brain examined every single. They need to check which neurons are firing in his synapse, which synapses are firing on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. The whole world knows if Blake Bell is under center, Blake Bell's getting the ball. We'll get to that. I know.
We're gonna get to that because that is one thing that frustrates me more so than the drops.
Because that's more frustrating because it's not going to change.
Exactly.
That's more frustrating.
But all of that said, what is there more data with? This Chiefs team will drop more passes than any team in NFL history, and Kadarius Toney should not be in the NFL, and maybe he has never played football before, or this is a team that has won 2 Super Bowls in 4 years and has been to 3 of them.
What's their record with Mahomes as the starter? 64-17.
They won 2 Super Bowls and been to 5 straight AFC.
It's outrageous. I don't really know. It's.
I should have done the drops for Kadarius Toney in my over-unders instead of Rice, and you guys would be screwed right
Apparently
now.
So.
You guys would be totally screwed because you guys took the under on Rice, who, by the way, had Rice catching the first touchdown pass of the year.
Not me.
Did you did? Nice.
No, I did not.
Nice.
I sat here and told you Sky Moore was going to have a big game, and he was in witness protection for 3 quarters.
Hey. Jesse Newell told me he was getting 900 yards this year. We're going to have a chat next week.
Hold on a second. That's for on second thought. Okay, that's your do-over when it comes to that. We got a lot to get to. We're going to talk a little KU Illinois. They're in action coming up in
4 hours.
4 hours. It's a 6:30 kickoff. That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
6:30 kickoff. We will get to that coming up with Jeremy Werner 24/7 Sports. We got a lot to get to here on 580 Sports Talk. 3 o'clock hour. Overreaction, proper reaction on second thought. Good old Andy Reid. We'll hear from Cooper Beebe, offensive lineman for the Kansas State Wildcats, who is pushing product, man. That is terrific. Big fan of the old NIL. Before we talk some KU Illinois, Juwan Taylor leaving early. Is that a problem, or is he correct where he's not leaving early? You know, it's almost the point where the rest of the O-line is slow off the ball and he's really good. Makes it maybe a little bit more of a it's all with your eyes. You see some guy move so much quicker than everybody else. Do we have an issue there or not?
Only if he mistimes it and false starts on a 4th down and 20 do we have an issue. Then it's an issue because it's a penalty. But it's not a penalty if he times it right. So it's not an issue. The kick step has been, and that's the name of the technique, that's been in the NFL for a long time. I remember back in 2016 watching Seahawks games. They had an offensive tackle named Bradley Soul, who was one of the worst offensive tackles in football, and he needed all the help he could get. And he was a big proponent. He used kick step. And I used to watch those games thinking, man, how are they not calling him for like 20 false starts a game? Well, the reason is he knows the snap count. He knows when the ball's being snapped, and he can drop that foot in concert with the ball being snapped, and it's not a false start. You know who does this all the time? Maybe the best right tackle in football in Lane Johnson. Does it all the time.
David Bakhtiari does too.
If you watched the Super Bowl, it probably drove you crazy. You, as a Chiefs fan, were probably like, man, why don't they call false start on Lane Johnson? He's leaving early. No, he's just really good at timing the kick step. It's legitimate technique. I know they were complaining on NBC about where Juwan Taylor was lined up, and maybe he's going to have to get his helmet a little closer to the waist to Creed Humphrey
See,
next
to me,
game.
that is the more of the question is just how far back he was lined up, because you have to get to his waist.
Well, fine. Move him up to 0.2 yards, 0.1 yard, or whatever
then
it is.
Then
that's not a problem.
The drop step.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
like
just a kick step. It's totally legal.
Man, I was kick stepping and kick sliding when I was on the punt team. Man, I had a good kick slide, guys. We used to get my kick slides in.
It's just good technique and good timing. And it's sort of like when a left-hander has a really good pickoff move, everybody thinks it's a balk, but it's not. Like you're using that 45-degree angle rule just right.
He's
to
Andy
pick guys
Pettit.
off. Yes. It is
Andy Pettit.
It is very similar. It's like a lefty with a really good pickoff move. If you do it right, everybody in the stadium should think you're false starting, except the officials who know the rules. And now you know the rules too. If you were confused last night and you wondered, wait, why isn't that a false start?
But
because it's not a false start.
I was told by NFL veteran, now turned, I get it wrong every single time I show up on TV, Gene Steratore, that it is a penalty. Like, no, it isn't.
Those guys just wish they were out there still throwing flags.
Like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You are. Like, every single NFL, I think Bakhtiari was on the social medias last night, was like, no, that's not a false start. Like, every single player and like all these O-line gurus are like,
Kyle Long was having like a real passive aggressive like subtweet war with his own brother who played defensive line.
Yeah.
It was all very funny.
like, everyone who is an expert at it is, it's not an issue.
I would have
He's not
agreed
false
100%
starting.
with Jeff Schwartz if he wasn't like the single most annoying former NFL player. I would have been like, Jeff, that's a great take, but he's wildly annoying. So I thought I had to side with the other side just out of principle.
Yeah, but you sided with it because of who was saying it. But like, if I said it, you'd be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, not me.
I saw
but like,
Jeff first. I saw his tweets first, though.
So to review, Juwan Taylor's not false starting because he's not false starting. He's not moving before the snap. If your friends ask you why it's not a false start, tell them that, because he's not moving before the snap. When he did move before the snap is when they called the false start.
Yeah. And they still should have maybe gotten it if Sky Moore could, learn to jump at the correct time and then
Mahomes about pulled the rabbit out of the hat
know.
there. And if Sky Moore had decent hands, maybe he brings that in. And we're talking today about the 4th and 25 game.
Yeah. 4th and 25. We got a lot more to get to. Coming up next, though, KU 3-point favorite over Illinois and Brett Bielema.
3.5 now.
3.5.
Yep.
We'll talk all things KU tonight Can we even watch the game? Is that going to be on
ESPN2?
ESPN2.
But can people get together and agree on stuff?
Do you have Spectrum? That would be really weird for you to have Spectrum cable in Topeka.
No, I don't have Spectrum.
Then yeah, you're
Then,
fine.
you're
Then
fine.
I'm good.
Here
Okay,
we're
cool.
fine.
Okay, cool. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't.
There are big swaths of the country
Yeah.
that maybe can't watch ESPN, but I don't know. Get ready to learn YouTube TV, buddy.
Coming up next, Jeremy Werner joins us to talk all things KU and Illinois. We got much more reaction for the Chiefs and the Lions yesterday. We'll get to that in the 3 o'clock hour plus the 4 o'clock hour. But tonight at the booth, David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium, it will be KU taking on Brett Bielema and Illinois, the Fighting Illini. And to talk all things KU and maybe more importantly, the Fighting Illini, we bring in Jeremy Werner of 24/7 Sports and the Illini Inquirer to talk all things KU and Illinois on our Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. Jeremy, my first question is, as the former boss of Brendan Dworzynski, talking to the current boss of Brendan Dworzynski, what the hell are we doing?
I don't know, man. What did we get into? I guess it was all for this. All for I could bring on him, talk Kansas, and you can bring on me, talk Illinois. Who knew this would be a big football game? But Brendan Dworzynski right in the middle of it.
I know he's torn because he loved the orange growing up, and now he loves the Jayhawks, and still talks about the Illini. I don't know what he's going to do right now.
I will say I did greatly enjoy back in summer 2016 the Bill Self segments I'd get myself into. That was a good time. lot of Bill Self talk that summer.
Bill coming back, guys. It's a great time. 20 years. I guess heals all wounds, because I think Illinois fans are ready to bring him back and applaud him. I don't know if in 2016, Brendan, they were ready to quite do that, given how far the basketball program has fallen. But Brad Underwood's brought him back to competitiveness and success in the Big Ten, so they're ready to bring back Bill with open arms. I'm not sure Hunter Dickinson will be welcomed back with open arms, but they love hitting Hunter, so that's going to be a fun time in October.
Well, it should be a fun time tonight, Jeremy. How excited are the Illinois fans gearing up for this one? It's a Friday night game. Illinois is the underdog. How are people kind of talking about this game there in Champaign?
Yeah, I think it changed a little bit last week by getting a real scare from a good Toledo team. Toledo, I think, would probably be one of the top 50 teams in the country. They're a good MAC program, won the MAC last year. I think they're going to win the MAC this year. But Illinois got outplayed in the trenches, which was a big surprise because Illinois lost a lot in the secondary. They replaced a quarterback who's pretty good for them last year in Tommy DeVito, and they had to replace an All-American running back in Chase Brown. But they brought back 3 All-Big Ten offensive linemen. They brought back one of the best defensive fronts in all of college football. And that's saying something for Illinois. I know you don't think of that usually with Illinois, but they've accrued some real talent on their defensive front, but they got pushed around by Toledo a little bit last week. So I think there's a little less confidence after that game, even though Illinois found a way to win because their biggest questions at quarterback and Luke Altmaier was fantastic. And then the secondary was pretty good against Toledo, despite losing all that NFL talent. So it's kind of a confusing result last week, but they did end up 1-0. They set up a big game here because if Illinois is able to get a road win at a obviously very competitive, much better Kansas program under Lance Leipold, Illinois goes into next week's game against number 7 Penn State 2-0 with Fox's big noon kickoff in Champaign. So this is kind of the lead up. Like if Illinois wins this game, I would imagine they're getting votes, a lot of votes in the AP top 25 heading into a matchup against Penn State that could be kind of an arrival game for Brett Bielema 2 years after they beat Penn State in Happy Valley. So they respect the heck out of Kansas and what Jalen Daniels, who obviously is probably going to start tonight, and what that offense is capable of. But there's a little probably more nerves than they expected, given how close of a call it was in week 1.
When it comes to this Illinois team, Brett Bielema is known as just, big physical type of teams. Is this that type of team? Because KU's biggest question seems like for the last 12 years is they don't have the Jimmies and the Joes up front. Is this another situation in which the offensive line, the defensive line for Illinois needs to impose their will, and if they do, KU's in trouble? Or, you know what, this is more of a coin toss in that area?
Illinois should have the advantage in the trenches, guys. Johnny Newton, who's their defensive tackle, is projected first-round draft pick. Now, he's got to prove himself to get there, but he was an All-American last year. Keith Randolph was an All-Big Ten player, is a potential mid-round NFL draft pick right now with room to go up. Seth Coleman and Gabe Atkins are really good edge rushers. And then the offensive line, Isaiah Adams probably could have been a draft pick last year. He decided to come back. He's their left guard right now. He can play right tackle, too. Julian Pearl, their left tackle, started a lot of games out there protecting the blind side of the quarterback. He's a potential NFL draft prospect. And as you guys know, like Brett Bielema is known for that, right? Like it's a big physical group. But they've been that the last 2 years at Illinois. They were not that last week. So I do think they have a chip on their shoulder to kind of prove themselves this week that they are that team. Because if Illinois is going to live up to its expectations this year, it needs to be strong in the trenches. That's how this program's built. It's how you win games in the Big Ten West. So I still see last week among the last 2+ years as kind of an outlier for Illinois. But, last week was concerning a little bit in the trenches. But I would imagine they'll bounce back. Brett Bielema and Bart Miller, their offensive line coach, have developed offensive line talent really well. And they have a couple NFL guys up front. Josh Kreutz, the son of Olin Kreutz, former Bears great at center. He had a pretty good first game as a debut at center. And then the defensive line, I expect them to be better because there's just so much talent up there. Last week, they kind of did a read and react kind of thing up front, and they got a little bit more aggressive in the second half and were better. So I would expect Kansas to get a better look up front than Illinois gave Toledo last week.
Jeremy Werner is our guest. He covers the Illinois Fighting Illini for IlliniInquirer.com and 24/7 Sports. He joins us here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline to preview KU versus Illinois coming up tonight at the booth, 6:30 kickoff. That game will be televised on ESPN2. Defensively for Illinois, Jeremy, they lose Ryan Walters, who had been defensive coordinator for a couple of years under Brett Bielema. He's now the head coach at Purdue. Along with all of the talent that they lost from the defense, especially on the back end last season, what did Illinois lose with Walters leaving, and what did they maybe add back in that wasn't part of his repertoire?
Yeah, they lost one of the best defensive play callers, I think, in the country. I have a ton of respect for Ryan Walters. And after 5 years of covering Lovie Smith defenses, guys, which was sit back in zone coverage and kind of let quarterbacks pick you apart pre-snap, Ryan Walters brought a modern, aggressive, multiple defense that really kept quarterbacks on their toes. Because if there's one thing about college quarterbacks, you got to make them think under duress. And, under Lovie Smith, quarterbacks kind of knew what they were doing pre-snap and knew where they were going. Under Ryan Walters, it's hard to tell what coverage they're running. It was hard to tell who's blitzing, who's not, and boy, were they aggressive. They ran 70, 75% of the time in man coverage. They could do that because they had Devin Witherspoon, who was the number 5 pick in the draft at cornerback. They could do that because they had Sidney Brown, who was a 3rd-round pick of the Eagles, who's going to play this year for the Eagles. They could do that because they had Quan Martin, a nickelback, who's a top 50 pick of the Commanders. And Ryan Walters was a huge part in developing those guys. But now Aaron Henry, who was the cornerbacks coach, secondary coach last year, he was elevated to the defense coordinator role. We've seen 2 games from him so far against teams that like to air it out a little bit. But he's not been quite as aggressive. He's sat more in zone coverage because they haven't had some of those stars last week. They did a lot more zones, so they keep their eyes on the quarterback, DeQuan Finn, who's a really good runner, kind of like we'll see with Jalen Daniels tonight. And Illinois just kind of lost its aggression up front. Again, they were kind of more read and react, and they just didn't get a lot of pressure. They didn't disrupt the backfield all that much. But the secondary was actually pretty good. But Illinois' defense the last couple of years has been aggressive, a lot of man coverage. We'll see if they continue that with so many newcomers in the secondary. But those newcomers played pretty well last week, and Aaron Henry did get a little bit more aggressive, ran more pressure packages and more man coverage late in the second half last week, or to some success. They got a pick six in 2 3-and-outs in that second half. So I'm really interested. We're still trying to figure out, like, what does Aaron Henry bring defensively? How does he, make adjustments? Because Ryan Walters was really good at it. So they gave up 28 points last week. They didn't do that very often last year under Ryan Walters. So still kind of figuring out what this defense is going to bring. And of course, tonight is a huge, huge test for them with this explosive Kansas offense.
So if you are Aaron Henry then, and you're looking at what you just described as an explosive Kansas offense, what part of that offense do you think is the most concerning for the Illini defense? Is it simply having the dynamism of Jalen Daniels behind center? Is it the multifaceted running attack with Devin Neal, Sevian Morris, and Daniel Highshaw? Or is it some of those wide receivers and tight ends? What do you think would be the most concerning part of that offense for the Illinois defense?
Yeah, it's that backfield. It's a dynamic quarterback because Jalen Daniels is better than the quarterback they played last week. All respect to DeQuan Finn, who's an all-MAC guy, but Daniels is doing it at a higher level. He's a better passer than DeQuan Finn was. So he's going to get his at some point tonight if he's healthy, right? If he's the normal Jalen Daniels, he's going to make some plays, but Illinois just has to limit those. They did let DeQuan Finn get loose on the edge last week, which is concerning because that was kind of their whole plan, was to contain him in the run game. They really weren't able to do it. So their outside linebackers, their linebackers have to be better. But for me, the defensive tackles of Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph, those guys have to be disruptive. I would let those guys loose. They seemed like they were kind of hesitant. They were kind of reading, reacting, looking into the backfield rather than just getting upfield. I think you have to disrupt what they do in the backfield, get pressure in Jalen Daniels' space, and make sure Devin Neal's got to make a move before he gets to the line of scrimmage. Because last week, Toledo's running backs were getting a couple of yards down past the line of scrimmage before they were even getting touched. So I think that's going to be the key is that interior of the defensive line. They were so disruptive for Illinois last year. They were not last week. So they got to get back to being as good as they are. And when they're on top of their game, Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph guys can be absolute game wreckers. Keith Randolph had a pretty strong final 3 quarters last week. Johnny Newton was not quite himself. So the Illinois really needs its stars up front to be stars and to disrupt that defensive backfield. Because Kansas, tight ends and wide receivers are pretty good, but I still think Illinois' secondary has done a pretty good job, and their scheme does a pretty good job of kind of containing some of those big plays. You can't let that quarterback loose. You can't let that running back get these the big gashes up front.
Jeremy Werner of 24/7 Sports and Illini Inquirer joining us here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline to preview tonight's game at David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium between Kansas and the Illinois Fighting Illini. Jeremy, Luke Altmaier made his first career start at quarterback for Illinois in the win over Toledo. He made a big-time throw on 4th down on the final drive of the game, that 12-play, 64-yard touchdown drive that ended up winning the game for the Illini. The Ole Miss transfer obviously gets the nod tonight. What are your thoughts on what you've seen from Altmaier through one game? And if Jalen Daniels and company are able to put up a number, how confident are you that Altmaier can lead an effort that can match it?
Listen, it was a small sample size of what we've seen at Luke Altmaier at this level, but he played incredibly well last week. I think that was the biggest positive of last week's game. Is Illinois knew it had a talented quarterback. Luke Altmaier is a 4-star prospect, went to Ole Miss, competed for the job, was Matt Corral's backup for a year, played in the Sugar Bowl when Matt Corral got hurt, and played decently well for a true freshman, or redshirt freshman, excuse me. And then last year, he competes for the job with Jackson Dart all the way into the season. Then Luke had an upper body injury that caused him to miss some time, and Jackson Dart kind of took the job and ran with it. But Luke Altmaier pushed him all the way in there. But he had offers from Alabama and a lot of big SEC schools, guys. And he's a dynamic talent. And our question just was, he doesn't have experience. How does he react when he makes a mistake? How does he react when he gets hit? And I got to tell you guys, his poise and his toughness really shined against Toledo. Illinois was down by 12 points in the third quarter, and he led 2 big scoring drives to help them take the lead. They were down with a point with 3 minutes left. And as you said, he made that huge 4th and 4, 33-yard pass downfield when he had 2 guys hit him, one low, one high. He knew it was coming, and he still stood in the pocket and made those throws. So his poise and toughness really shine, but he's a talented guy. He can really hurt you with his legs. I wouldn't call him a running quarterback, but he can make plays with his legs. Led the team in rushing last week with 69 yards. So he can run those RPOs and hurt you with his legs, but he's a really accurate passer with really good touch down the field. He did make one big mistake, and I think that's what we're expecting this season for him. First year as a starter is probably going to have some growing pains, but he had a really bad interception, threw to a running back down the field in triple coverage, guys, but he responded incredibly well to that. He really didn't make any other big mistakes after that. So his response to some of the adversity he faced, the adversity he created with that interception, I think Illinois thinks they found a guy in Luke Altmaier. And the best thing for Illinois, which has really struggled to find good quarterbacks for a long time, is Luke Altmaier has 2+ years of eligibility. He's got 2 more after this year, so they think they found a long-term guy.
Are you surprised that Illinois is a 3.5-point dog?
Not with the way they played last week. I do think, you're on the road. These are 2 teams that I think most of the projections kind of have similar, but just the way that Illinois looked in the trenches, I can see why they're not. I think if this game were at Illinois, I think Illinois might have a couple-point favorite. If this were a neutral side, it might be a true pick 'em, or Kansas by 1 or Illinois by 1. I'm not sure. I'm not much of a bettor myself, but I think just being at home for Kansas early in the season, when road games are really difficult to win, you're still trying to figure out a lot about yourself early in the season. I can see why Kansas is favorite. Plus, Lance Leipold, I think, is a really good coach. I did a lot of research, guys, on him a couple of years ago because he was one of the candidates for the Illinois job. And Illinois hires Bielema, Kansas hires Leipold, and look, these programs are playing a meaningful game in September against each other. I don't know if a lot of us would have thought that 2 years ago. So they've done a really good job there. But, Illinois is expected to compete in the Big Ten West, but they didn't look like that team last week. But I do think one of the benefits for Illinois compared to Kansas, I think Illinois learned a lot about itself last week, facing that adversity, finding out their issues. Kansas obviously had a great second half against Missouri State, but how much do you learn against an FCS opponent? So I do think Illinois has the advantage of learning a little bit about that. But Kansas does have the advantage of basically having, 48 hours of rest over Illinois, or 24 hours of rest for Illinois. So I think that's an advantage for Kansas too.
All right, I got 30 seconds. Pick me a winner in the Brendan Dorzinski Bowl.
I picked before the season, guys. I picked Kansas by 3, 31-28. So I just stuck with it. I didn't want to make week 1 that difficult. I just think Illinois got some things to learn. It's got some new pieces. But I do feel better about the quarterback and secondary than I thought, but I feel a little less confident in the trenches. But I just think Jalen Daniels and that offense are such a big test. But I do think Illinois offensively is going to pose a lot of tests for Kansas, because I still got to see it from Kansas defense against a Power 5 opponent. So I think Kansas should be favored going into this one, but I think we're going to have a really good game.
Jeremy, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game tonight at the booth.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
KU win. We got a lot more to get to. We'll get a quick timeout coming up. Over proper action for the Chiefs. 580 Sports Talk, hour number 2 on this Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. Jake LeBon, Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero with you. The trio will be heading to Bowen Glaze Stadium tonight. Our Lewis Toyota High School Game of the Week. On our sister station, Classic Country 106.9, will be Washburn Rural taking on DeSoto. 6:45 pre-game, 7 o'clock with the kickoff from Bowen Glaze Stadium. Very rare week 2 good weather. Good weather day.
A fact. I was reminiscing with my wife, who did not know me when I first moved here, obviously. It's like the third night I'd lived in Topeka. My first game was at Bowen Glaze Stadium. It's Washburn Rural against Manhattan. And there was a 3.5 hour weather/lightning
week
delay.
2 is always the bad
It's
weather.
always week 2.
Yeah,
This is always the one to watch out for. It does not look like we're going to get any precipitation, but the air quality right now is not awesome.
Not great.
I have been all day not even thinking about the concept of weather. I woke up today, checked my phone, looked outside. It's like week 2. I know what happens on week 2. I'm not even going to think about it.
So,
I don't want to bring that into existence.
And there won't be a 3-hour delay, hopefully. In fact, the game might take an hour 50 because of...
Get ready to learn the flight mode, buddy.
I can't believe it. So we got that coming up tonight. We got Royals baseball coming up tonight. Nobody cares. The Royals, Bobby Witt hit 2 more home runs because I want you to be a 30-30 player, and I think that's pretty cool. But we're off a little bit earlier because of the Royals. Little scheduling switcheroo. We're going to have Matt Derrick join us at 4:35 today. We'll see and play our conversation with Cooper Beebe coming up in the bottom of this hour. So we got lots to get to, but because of what occurred yesterday, people want fire and brimstone, and they want me to go, all throw haymakers at each and everybody. It's not going to happen. But there's a couple things that I do wish that people would proper react on. So I've got overreaction, proper reaction, Chiefs edition here. My first one.
Oh, do you want the theme song? Yeah,
You're overreacting.
I think you're overreacting.
A highly sensible reaction.
Totally rational reaction.
An understandable reaction.
I overreacted.
Chiefs defense is better than we expected going into week 2, even without Chris Jones.
I think they played pretty well. I mean, you look at the raw numbers, 14 points allowed, 3.5 yards per carry. That was the biggest one for me. I know they put together, Detroit did, the drive late where they scored the go-ahead touchdown, and they ran the ball effectively, especially when they got inside the Kansas City 30. And that obviously is like what we saw. We saw that, and then we saw the last drive of the game where the Chiefs had to keep them from getting 10 yards in 4 plays, and they got 11. But I thought by and large, against a team that I think a lot of people expect to be explosive and score a lot of points with a bunch of playmakers and have a really good running game behind a really good offensive line, I think the Chiefs more than held their own. I thought that they played the run pretty well. I thought they were, for the most part, fundamentally sound, tackled pretty well. I certainly think there are some things you can nitpick at that are valid, but by and large, if you want to point fingers for why the Chiefs lost, I don't think it starts with anybody on the defensive side.
So you got proper reaction then?
I think that's a fair reaction.
Okay.
Yes, I will say that it is a fair reaction to say that they outperformed expectations without Chris Jones in week 1. That is that is the proper reaction to me.
Yeah, I would say it's still a proper reaction. I am a little concerned about how much space some Lions receivers had on plays throughout the game. I think the Chiefs seemed somewhat unprepared, or I won't say unprepared, not properly prepared for the play action drop back game of the Lions. It felt like there were too many free release wide receivers with way too much space just in general down the pattern. But that being said, you allowed 14 points. I don't think Jared Goff was great. We talked about Mahomes, maybe not his finest game. Certainly not Jared Goff's best game. I thought he had a couple of drives where he looked sharp. Otherwise, I thought he missed some targets he probably should have connected with. All in all, though, I was pretty pleased. I didn't think that game was going to go under. I didn't think we were only going to get 41 total points in that game. Well, and only 34 of them were from the offenses. So, no, I think that's a fair reaction.
There are a couple of guys I didn't think carried their weight. I thought the safety group early in the game on the first touchdown drive did not cover themselves in glory. Justin Reed took a really bad pursuit angle.
Was he aware that this game counted at the start?
I thought Mike Edwards, I was really mean on the instant reaction video. I said he was just getting cardio in all night. I didn't think Mike Edwards was particularly impactful as that third safety. But Reed played a really good second half. Like, he was really impactful in a positive way, I thought, in the second half. There was one play I remember Willie Gay didn't know where to be and then got washed out of the play on a run to the right. That ended up being a big play for the Lions at one point in the fourth quarter. Might have even been on that touchdown drive. So, there were some ups, there were some downs, but I think there were more ups than downs. And I think there were a lot of people that thought, oh man, the Lions are just they'll do whatever they want through the air if the Chiefs don't have Chris Jones. And the pass rush, I mean, like we said, they were going to have to be more creative with how they got to the quarterback, and they were. And for the most part, they did disrupt Jared Goff's timing quite a bit last night, as much as I would have expected them to. Like, I didn't expect him to live in the backfield, not against that offensive line. I thought they did a fine job.
Yeah, I think it's the proper reaction. I like what the Chiefs defense did.
All right, let me build on that one then. George Karlaftis, better than expected.
Boy, the first series he was good, caused, throwaway. I'll say proper reaction. I think George is going to have a good year this year.
I think he's going to have a good year too. And I think we, speaking for the three of us and just people who follow the Chiefs in general, I think expected him to be better this year than last year because he's not a rookie anymore. He's got more experience in the NFL, game speed, all of those kinds of things, increased, smarts, wisdom about what it takes to win in the NFL game. I thought he was the best Chief in last night's game. Either side of the ball, full 60 minutes. I thought the best player on the field was George Karlaftis. And honestly, we were going to name number 2. It might be the guy who started on the opposite end of the line from him. I thought Mike Dana was great in yesterday's game.
Contract year, Mike Dana.
Maybe. It's undefeated.
Officially.
But that might be your 2 best players from the game. So that's where I brought it from, because I thought the way he was getting off the ball was great. Even if he didn't get home every time, I thought the way he was getting into passing lanes on some of those screens was really impressive. He was forcing pressure, using that strength-speed combo. I loved what we saw from Karlaftis last night.
Yeah, it was just more. It was building on, I think, what he showed that he could do last year. The high motor, the disruptiveness, getting into passing lanes, reading the play well. There were a lot of screens that the Chiefs were ready for. And it wasn't just him. There was one, Derek Nottie, just ate alive, I think, on the first drive of the night for the Lions. And that's a credit to Joe Cullen, credit to Steve Spagnuolo. They had those guys ready for those plays. But, yeah, I think that is a proper reaction, that George Karlaftis was the best player on the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs last night. And that's really encouraging to see from a second-year guy who they're going to be asking a lot of this season. And a lot of, especially as long as Chris Jones isn't on the field and as long as Charles Omenihu isn't on the field. Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
I've got a couple of them. I can round them off if you want.
Yeah, we can do a bunch. We got plenty of time here.
I can do a bunch of them.
Overreaction, proper reaction. These wide receivers can't get open.
Overreaction. Kadarius Toney was wide open all game. He was wide open. He just couldn't catch him. Like, that's the thing. Like, I saw some of like the super advanced, like, nerdy ones. He had the second most yards of separation of any wide receiver for either team in the game yesterday. He just couldn't catch it. Like, I think they can get open. They just couldn't catch the dang thing yesterday, or they weren't on the same page with Mahomes. So I think it's an overreaction right now, especially for Toney. Talk to me next week about Sky Moore if he can find a way to get open a little bit better. You run 31 pass routes. 31 times that you stepped on the field to run a route, and you got targeted 4 times. Now, let's say half of those you weren't the intended target. Okay, so you ran 15, let's say 16 routes. That means you still only got targeted a quarter of the time. That is not ideal. He was on the field more than anybody. So Sky Moore, TBD. Everyone else, I'm gonna say overreaction. Tony was open. He's gonna catch the ball.
They had him probably for a touchdown. It was a play in the second quarter, and he ran a route that he was behind the defense. And Mahomes couldn't get the play off because they decided on that play that Noah Gray could block Aiden Hutchinson one-on-one. And that did not work for the Chiefs. If Gray had been able to hold his ground for half a second, Mahomes probably hits Tony in stride. Instead, Mahomes kind of had to just dump it and get rid of it short of the defenders and just call it good. I think that there were not guys getting much separation early. But I also think that the more you look at clips from the game, some of that is maybe guys were running routes into other people's space. There were a lot of miscommunications on routes last night. And I wonder if that, more than anything else, might have been the hang up that kept Mahomes from getting the ball out real quick last night.
So I'm looking at the information from NFL Next Gen Stats right now. Only 7 players despite all the guys who caught passes yesterday, only 7 qualified for the leaderboard. You had to have at least 3 this week. And the Chiefs had 3 players who had at least that many targets, at least 5 targets this week. I'm sorry. And Tony had the second most average yards of separation. Rashee Rice was 4th. Noah Gray was 6th. Those are the only 3 guys who even qualified for it. So I think that sort of reflects the eye test from this game, that Tony was open and he couldn't do it. He could not succeed at his task. Rashee Rice was able to do a little bit, and Noah Gray didn't do a whole lot, which is not surprising because there were a couple times there was a defender on his back, essentially, not for a penalty, just all over him in sticky coverage. That tracks. I think the eye test and the data back each other up there.
All righty. Overreaction, proper reaction. The game yesterday hurts Chris Jones's image overall with what occurred and just how awkward it looked with him being in the stands, sandwiched by his two agents. That looked just gross.
Sitting up there with Paulie Walnuts and big P word from The Sopranos.
You know what I mean? Like, it just. So the overreaction, proper reaction.
No, I think it's a proper reaction to the optics of the situation.
Yeah, there is no doubt he has lost the case in the court of public opinion at this point.
And we talked about it last night on the post-game show that, look, at this point, I don't really think anything on the field is going to move the argument one way or the other, and I don't think he was at fault for that loss last night. Some people who were watching the show thought otherwise. Totally fine. But if you're just talking optics and perception at this point, showing up to a game with all your friends and teammates and coaches playing and coaching and participating and watching it almost literally from an ivory tower is not a very good look. If you're trying, we talk about this anytime there's a CBA that comes up, that it's crazy that the public sides with the billionaires over the millionaires. The people who work to generate that money get less public support than the people who hold on to that money. This is the kind of situation where you would think, if you followed that same logic, like, hey, support the guy who's trying to make the money and get the Chiefs to a Super Bowl. But if you're just looking at it, like in a vacuum, your guys are down there busting their tails to try to win in a game where, even though I don't think he's the reason they lost, not anywhere close to the top of the list, clearly an all hands on deck kind of game, since you lost by a single point and it came down to the end of the fourth quarter. So to be up there surrounded by your agents like they're your bodyguards.
That's who my wife thought they were.
Yeah. Like,
Abby's like, are those his bodyguards? I said, no, I think those are his. I don't know the Katz brothers by face. I had to Google them to see that that's who that was. But I said, I think those are his agents.
Literally looking down on his teammates. Yeah. It's just not a good look. Which, what does that actually mean? Not really up to me to say.
That all being said, by far the laziest take that I saw last night from otherwise like smart people like Dominique Foxworth, who I have a lot of regard for from ESPN, was tweeting nonsense like this about, oh no, now Chris Jones is going to get paid. Chris Jones is opening up a bunch of different bank accounts. Like,
they weren't.
I don't know. I don't know what about last night's defensive performance made you say yeah, they have no chance to succeed without Chris Jones. They're a totally different team without Chris Jones.
Like, if anything, it was 87. They needed 87.
Yeah.
instead
How
of-
about Travis Kelce back up the Brinks truck?
right? Like,
Why aren't we
that-
talking about him opening up a bunch of different bank accounts?
I am very pro. I hope the guy gets paid, but there are certain instances, and wild how we're dealing with nuance here, that you had your chance. It didn't work. Now I just can't imagine Chris Jones walks into the building on Monday, ends his holdout, and they see him. You're not gonna look at him differently if you're a teammate. Like, you weren't in the foxhole with us, man, when we needed you. Like that and you're trying to benefit your situation. You want to help benefits my situation, us winning, that's why that, to me, this isn't just a typical holdout now. And I still think the Chiefs have offered, hopefully, a decent offer. My opinion would completely change if we knew more about the numbers. And we're not going to know the numbers.
I mean, I think everyone's in that boat. Like, if we knew for a fact the Chiefs were offering like exactly what Quinnen Williams got, I think everybody would be on the side of Chris Jones.
1,000%.
Whereas if we knew, the reporting from Nate Taylor that he wanted, I think it was Nate, about $30 million, so a little less than Aaron Donald, but he's actually asking for
28
for 35 a year. He wants Mahomes money. Okay, everyone's going to side with Chiefs then.
How about Melissa Stark saying that they haven't had contract talks for a week and a half?
Yeah, that's
what she said.
And it goes to show you this idea that, because the Chiefs lost last night, the Chiefs are going to cave. If they were going to cave, it would have happened before they had to play a game with
They
them.
would have done what the 49ers did and caved to Bosa.
In theory, and you can tell me if I'm an idiot, which, more often than not, the answer is yes. I almost feel like the Chiefs are going to be able to dig their feet in even more with a loss than with a win. Because I've said that before. Like, if the Chiefs win without Jones out there, then it's, hey, man, you need us more than we need you, apparently. Now, whether that's true or not, again, optics. But if they lose and still aren't willing to budge, what is Chris Jones's leverage at that point?
No,
I don't think he has any at that point.
Hey, as far as I'm concerned, Chris Jones, the more you miss, the cheaper you are next year, and the more money that you're not going to get this year. I think the smart thing to do is tag him and trade him at the end of the year.
Yeah, I assume that's going to happen.
There's a little bit of me who's got a little bit of where I'm like,
a little bit of what?
Just like, okay, you're gonna do this to me. All right, fine. I'll tag you next year. You ain't gonna make squat. Fine, don't show up, don't play. Another year that you're not gonna get any money guaranteed. Guess how old you're gonna be next year when you become a free agent? 31 years old. Let me know how that contract's gonna work out. But that doesn't benefit the other team. That just, sticks it to Chris Jones.
Overreaction or proper reaction? The Chiefs should be monitoring the Mike Evans situation a lot more closely.
No, that's a proper reaction. And if for no other reason, even if Kadarius Toney doesn't drop a pass last night, even if Sky Moore put on his pads and actually played in the game, like, Mike Evans is so good. He's never had a year with under 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
And before Tom Brady, Dave Craig was throwing him passes.
He's the most
current Dave Craig.
I think he is one of the most underrated.
Yes.
Consistently
productive.
Well above. Like, he's not Justin Jefferson. He's never been that. He's never been Tyreek Hill. He's never been Devontae Adams. He's a level below that. But
he's AJ Green.
He is so consistently good. And no, it's a proper reaction. It all depends on the compensation. You're not giving up a first, probably not a second.
No, not for a rental player.
No. Like,
I don't think it would.
Depends.
I don't think maybe the Bucs ask for that, and if they do, they're not going to trade him.
Yeah, if they're looking for a first round pick for a rental player, I don't think they're going to get that.
No.
Who is already 30?
But a second rounder?
I think depending on the package, I would absolutely make that move if I was the Chiefs. Second round, I don't know. That might be a little too rich, even if you're assuming that pick is going to be, 58 or later. But even a third, like straight up, just third round pick for Mike Evans, I would probably do it. I probably would, because even at now 30 years old in his career, he can still go up and get it. That is still something that this team doesn't have. They don't necessarily need it, but in a year where you're putting together this amalgamation of 100 different receivers, all of whom do things slightly differently to get every skill set covered, the only one that isn't covered is the go up and get it guy. And Mike Evans, it could be that guy. It's also very funny that I have his stats up right here. 2017, he beat 1,000 yards by one. He got to 1,001 yards that year.
Overreaction, proper reaction. The Chiefs need to see more and have Justin Ross play a little bit more in week 2.
No, I agree with that too. I think
proper reaction.
I would call it proper reaction.
You know what he didn't do last night? Drop a pass.
He only had one ball thrown his way, but he caught it.
Look, especially if they're now we know the Chiefs are stubborn with their personnel. We know, and with everything, understand that is the case. But if there continue to be problems with drops for Tony, confidence issues, whatever, in games, in practice, what have you, then absolutely you should see more of Justin Ross. Because if for no other reason, if you're going to activate him, why not use him? If you're going to keep 7 receivers out of 46, or if you elevate practice squad guys, 48, 7 divided by 48, that is almost 15% of your game day roster is just receivers. So if you're going to keep them, you might as well use them. And I think Ross, what's the harm? What would the harm have been last night in the fourth quarter if you had said, all right, Tony, your snaps are going to Ross? What would have been harmed? Other than Andy Reid's brain maybe leaking out of his ears because he would have made a rapid, crazy adjustment like that.
We'll get a quick timeout. We got lots more to get to. We got on second thought. We'll also go into Andy Reid in the 4 o'clock hour, Cooper Beebe, all that coming up here on 580 Sports Talk. time for a little on second thought. It is the end of the week, and this is where we get to say I'd like a mulligan on an opinion and or a take. All right, what do you got?
On second thought, Sky Moore should not have been my big chief of the night last night. I saw on Twitter that one particular sports book, I believe it was BetMGM, had taken a certain amount of bets on Sky Moore's receiving yards prop. His over-under was 49.5 yards. 99% of the money at BetMGM was on over 49.5 yards.
Wow.
And hey, those books got to make their money back somehow because, I mean, you know, they lost their shirts on Coach Prime last week and they're trying to recoup some of that money.
Last night's FanDuel, the Kansas bet, the Patrick Mahomes 250 yards and a touchdown.
Oh, that was a lock.
All Tony has to do is catch that ball.
Yeah.
I'm never going to financially recover from this.
That's a good one. What do you got?
Well, I said the Chiefs are going to blow out the Lions.
Yeah.
So just generally all of my opinions going into the game, they were all wrong. Everything went badly. Except the defense was pretty decent.
Yeah. I thought the defense would play well. Mine was very simply, I said, there's no way that the Chiefs don't score 33 points. The only way is if they turn it over like 5 times. They turned it over once and it had nothing to do with turnovers, and they scored 20 points.
I just can't get over how many clips there are floating around from the All-22 where a receiver is running into another receiver. It happened so often last night, and we almost never see this happen from Chiefs teams, from Andy Reid teams. They are usually totally in sync. Last night felt like the first rehearsal of a play rather than feeling like opening night of a play.
You could definitely tell that Kadarius Toney missed all of training camp.
Yes.
Definitely tell.
Fact.
That's
And
a fact.
I mean,
that's why it is important for quarterbacks and receivers to be at camp.
and I do think that there was a bit of an impact in a guy who's always a big part of your game plan not suddenly being available to play 48 hours prior to the start. Maybe they junked some things and tried to put some new things in. And certainly, like I mentioned, like I want to make sure we give Detroit credit. They threw a curveball at the Chiefs. They ran a bunch of zone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Chiefs had a whole bunch of man beater stuff and, you know, all the pre-snap motion they like to do and nobody's budging. So you got man beaters against zone. Sometimes, you run into each other when the defensive backs are pulled back. So, I don't know that it's a long-term issue, but last night it was just so unlike the Chiefs to look like that.
Coming up next, Matt Derrick will join us to talk all things Chiefs football. City to talk about the team that is now, right now, number one pick in the NFL draft goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. And to talk all things Chiefs on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline is our Chiefs insider. He is the absolute best. He is Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. All right, Matt, are you in the camp of it's one game, or are you in the camp of the Chiefs have a serious problem at wide receiver?
I'm in the camp of it's just one game. I don't think that they're quite in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes yet for the number one pick in the draft, but that was an ugly performance last night for the wide receiver group for the most part. It was rough, but I can't imagine them having another night like that. That just seemed to be such an outlier, but time will tell, I guess.
What did kind of happen to the offense outside of the drops, or was that pretty much it?
I mean, that was a huge part of it. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, everything just offensively seemed to be a tick off, as Andy Reid, I think, would say. Offensive line, I didn't think was actually that bad. Sure, there was a few hiccups here and there, missed assignments, missed blocks, things that you're going to see. Those things will usually get tightened up. You know, the penalties, there was just a couple of bad ones at some wrong times. But other than that, I thought the offensive line played pretty well. Mahomes, I thought, was the same way, played pretty well. Just was off a little tick. Maybe didn't make a couple of reads that he would normally make. A couple of throws I think he'd like to have back just weren't very good efforts. But then when he did put the ball in some guys' hands, it just went right through them. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of a lot of guys pressing because Travis Kelce wasn't there. Those drops are usually, that's the case. I mean, that's usually a case of guys are trying to do too much. They're trying to run without the football, trying to take off early. They're looking for where they're going to make a play rather than looking the ball into their hand. Those are mental mistakes more than anything else usually. And so that's why I think they got a chance to fix them. And if it was just a little bit of, hey, everybody thinks that they need to do more because Travis Kelce wasn't there. Well, Travis Kelce in theory should be back pretty soon. And if that's a cause of it, that would help alleviate it, you would think.
When it comes to the receivers, was it anything about them not getting open? I mentioned Kadarius Toney just was open. He just couldn't catch anything. And when it comes to the receiver aspect of it, do you think that, hey, they just can't get open? Like Sky Moore ran 31 routes and got the ball thrown to him 4 times.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because, you know, it seems like there was a disproportionate number of targets for some guys on their routes versus, you know, other guys. I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, Sky Moore probably didn't do anything to deserve more targets, so maybe that's one thing right there. But at the same time, if Kadarius Toney was in the game and running a route, pretty good chance the ball was coming his way. Like 50% of the time, the ball was coming his way. And he just didn't do anything with it. I mean, I think for the most part, there was a lot of separation for these guys. That was surprising to me, considering that, you know, the Lions didn't blitz very much. They mostly just came at Mahomes with 4, which meant that they could drop guys back. And that was one of the problems the Chiefs did have. I mean, they did have some trouble with guys getting open, but on the right side, Mahomes had plenty of time to throw. Now, there were a couple of moments, I think, when he maybe escaped some clean pockets, but he had plenty of time. It's just that it was taking too long for those receivers to get that separation and for him to get through his reads. That to me is the tricky thing, is just that, you know, if your fifth read's open, but Mahomes doesn't have time to get there because there's just the coverage is pretty good, that's a deeper problem. I mean, it's something you're going to have to work on as far as maybe just even play design, play development, and play calling. There were some and coaching miscues last night. I think there were a couple of those as well. I mean, you can't take the coaches out of this as also. But yeah, I just don't know if there was, with 7 receivers last night, that there was a way for any of them to ever really get into rhythm. And I'm not sure that Mahomes ever found a rhythm with them either.
We're chatting with Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider from ChiefsDigest.com. It is Matt joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline on this Friday afternoon following the Chiefs' season opening loss. You can find all of Matt's coverage of the Chiefs at ChiefsDigest.com, or you can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Not or, and. Find him on both places. That's the smart move. Speaking of those coaching decisions, Matt, there were a few that were head-scratching. There was one in particular for me that I'm still seething about, and it was the Blake Bell direct snap on the 4th and short. what was going on with some of the decisions in that game? Does it simply come down to sometimes this coaching staff does have a tendency to just get too cute, or do you think something else was at play there?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like for sure that the Chiefs just don't feel like that they're equipped to push forward for 1 or 2 yards when they need it. And I do kind of get that, because as good as this offensive line is, its one weakness is probably getting push and getting leverage in short yardage. And some of that's just a byproduct of the offensive line they have. They got a lot of tall guys and big guys that are who are athletic, who are really good at getting to the outside, getting downfield. They're very good at pass protection. But when you're talking about the game of low man wins in football, and that's what short yardage is, it's not the best equipped group in the league for that. And I think once again you saw a little bit of that even on the Blake Bell play. I mean, that was a little bit of what was the issue, was just the offensive line didn't get the protection that they needed. There was at least one missed assignment there. But on top of that, the Lions weren't surprised. They weren't surprised even by the twist on it that he gives it the Rice on the jet sweep. They seem to be ready for that. So I don't think that there's anybody in the league who hasn't figured out what the Chiefs are doing with those belldozer plays. Problem is that unlike the Eagles, they've figured out how to stop it. I mean, everybody's got a pretty good knack on this and read on it. And even if the Chiefs do throw some wrinkles on it, they're expecting it. So I think probably to a degree, Reed and company needs to go back to the drawing board to figure out what they're going to do in those situations. And maybe the answer is simple. Maybe the answer is just put the ball in Mahomes' hand and see what he can do. Because right now, nothing else that they're doing in 3rd and 1, 4th and 2 situations are working.
That is the part to me, Matt, that you just got to there that makes me the most upset, other than the fact that every single defensive coordinator or defensive line coach or fan around the league knows exactly what's going to happen when you do those plays, is the fact that you're taking the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. He's the best player in the world. Why would you want him making fewer plays? I don't even think this is a question. It's just so frustrating to me that you are making a conscious effort to take the ball away from number 15. There's either no or very little logic behind that to me.
Yeah, and maybe last night will prove to be the outlier. Maybe Andy Reid won't call the quarterback sneak with Bell ever again. Maybe they'll just abandon it and try something else. But last night was kind of a quagmire, because you would say, okay, put the ball in Mahomes' hand. And maybe if he had Travis Kelce there, maybe they would have done that in some of those situations. But, with the way that the receivers were playing, and, and right now, I don't think that on the field last night with Kelce out of there wasn't a alpha go-to receiver. I mean, there's not the guy that you say, okay, 3rd and 2, this is where Mahomes can go, because this is the guy who can get open, get 3 yards, get you everything you need. I mean, Tyreek Hill was obviously one of those guys. Travis Kelce is still one of those guys. Juju last year was one of those guys. Can somebody else step up and be that? Can Marquez be that? Rashee Rice, I think, got the potential to be one of those guys one day. Can Richie James be that? I think he was a little bit of that guy last year for the Giants. I mean, maybe that player is there. Maybe it's just as somebody who needs a development, but that's the one thing that I worried about that this offense might be missing, is that they just need a receiver who is going to be the alpha. Somebody's got to be the number one. Somebody's got to be the guy. As much as it's great to have depth, and maybe you got a bunch of 2s, 3s, and 4s, and no true 7. But if you don't have that one guy that you can trust in crunch time, I don't know if it matters that you put the ball in Mahomes' hand.
Joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline is our Chiefs insider, Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. He joins us every Friday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Check out Matt's writing at ChiefsDigest.com. Find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, I posted on Twitter last night, I didn't think it was a great night for the newcomers, the new players, whether we're talking about rookies or we're talking about free agent signings that joined the team of the offseason, from Richie James, Mike Edwards, Drew Tranquil. The offensive tackles I thought were okay until they both committed back-breaking penalties on the final drive of the game. What was your impression of the new players, their first time out? Was there anyone that maybe stood out to you as having a real positive Chiefs debut, even in the loss?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there weren't any what I would say probably big breakthrough plays by any of the newcomers. There were some guys that I thought were solid. You know, Chamari Connor got a start as kind of the nickel safety, and I thought that he played reasonably well. Didn't call his name a lot as far as just making some bad plays, and sometimes that's a good thing. I was really surprised that Drew Tranquil didn't get more snaps. I really thought he was going to figure a little bit more into the game plan, especially against a team like the Lions that was going to throw the football a lot. Thought he might be out there for his coverage skills, but you didn't really see him, and he had a kind of quiet night. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Richie James, I expected a little bit more of, and I think that the Chiefs did too because they played him a lot. More than I expected based on his training camp usage and preseason. And I approve of that. I mean, I think he needs that work and he's going to be good. I'm just kind of curious why they didn't get him more work with Mahomes during August, because I think if they had, they would probably be seeing some of the results of that, some of the chemistry. But they gave a lot of those snaps to some other guys. And I just don't know if you're seeing the results with it because the other rookies and a guy getting on the field the first time like Justin Ross, I mean, there were some moments, but you're right. I mean, there wasn't, I don't know if there was any free agent or rookie that had an outstanding game. Keandre Coburn, I thought, looked good in moments and spurts, but, and Felix, I thought had, pretty good moments a couple of times, but there wasn't anyone in that group, you're right, that just had an outstanding night.
What was your reaction to the multiple shots of Chris Jones seated betwixt the Katz brothers in a suite watching last night's game instead of honoring his contract and playing in it? And if you showed a screenshot of that to a Chiefs player, what reaction do you think you'd get, or would you be able to hear it through the gritted teeth?
Good question. And I think you're right about the gritted teeth. I mean, even talking to some of the guys in the locker room last night about whether Chris was a distraction or there was any concerns, they're all still saying the right things, that that they're not worrying about him, they're worrying about themselves, that they can't really feel anything else about Chris. There's other things to worry about. But I feel like the last 2 days were really a pretty bad look for Chris. I don't think that the press conference at the Ronald McDonald House was a great idea. I thought some of his answers lacked a little bit of understanding of the situation and maybe his surroundings and his environment. And then, going to the game and not wearing Chiefs colors. Was it a Seahawks hat that he was apparently wearing? I mean, I get it if it fits well, but you know what? That's the great thing about New Era. They make those caps in 32 different colors and schemes. So I think he could have found the Chiefs one he liked. I was really surprised by that. I thought at the very least he'd be wearing some white and red, but that was an interesting choice. And we'll see. I mean, I can't put myself into the feet of these players. I mean, I've been saying it. NFL locker room is a weird place to work, and that's why I thought that Chris's comparison of an NFL job to all of us was really tone deaf, because he's saying he's just looking for a raise, and it's no different than anybody else looking for a raise. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm probably the same way. If I just go out try and get a raise from my boss and don't show up to work for 49 days, they're going to fire me. And the people I'm working with are probably going to hate me because they're having to pick up the slack. So at some point, I think that's absolutely going to happen in this locker room if there's not a resolution to this.
We're talking with Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits phone line. And did you think the pass rush was okay without Jones?
Okay is probably about what I would say. I mean, they did have to blitz a lot. Jared Goff was blitzed on about 40% of his dropbacks, and that's quite a bit. But I thought it was effective. I mean, they only got the one sack. That was Mike Dana's, and that was a really good play by Dana. But, this Detroit offensive line is not a bad offensive line. I mean, they were, second in the league last year in allowing sacks. So even one sack against Goff is pretty good. They averaged about 1.5 a game. So that's, are right on target. I mean, getting more sacks than that against Goff would have been a really good outing. So I think they got pressure. The fact that they had to blitz a lot is obviously problematic, but I thought that the blitzing was effective. They disguised it well. Even the guys that they dropped back played reasonably well. The only problem I think really was is that, when you blitz that much, you're going to play a lot of zone, and Detroit found some soft spots in the zone. And if that film gets out, and teams start picking it apart and they're effectively able to find some of those soft spots behind the blitzes, then it's not going to work forever. But I thought for last night, it was effective. The defense only gives up 14 points. I mean, if you had told me that going into that game, I would have said that this is a Chiefs win almost 100% of the time.
So when it comes to the Chiefs, and we'll talk more about the Jags game next week, but do you think Chris Jones plays next week?
I don't know. I mean, I still think that if he shows up, I think that the Chiefs would probably, and this is assuming that he shows up without a new contract. If he does, the Chiefs would absolutely, almost positively, get a roster exemption for him for a week or two, just to figure out the salary cap implications and get him ready. But I think even if he does get a new contract and shows up, I think he's going to need a week or two to get up to game speed. Working out in Miami and working out on your own, it's not the same against going up against NFL players in a game. And that's where I think he's definitely going to need some time to ramp it up, even though I'm sure he's in good shape.
He wouldn't be able to play, 15, 20 snaps, you think? I think he'd still be able to play in the game coming up against the Jags.
Counterpoint, we saw Kadarius Toney with no practice. That did not go well.
No, that's true. But he's not trying to catch the ball. He's just trying to push people around.
And, and that's kind of one of the pushbacks I have against, Chris being in the game last night. Would he have made much of an impact? I mean, I don't know if he would have changed that dramatically. The defense played pretty well. One of the areas where they did struggle was run defense. And no offense to Chris Jones, but I don't think that he's really beefing up the run defense last night that much.
Not the way that the Chiefs Kingdom, which, by the way, is not handling this loss well. I don't know if you know that, Matt.
It seems that there are some feelings out there, and I get that. I get that.
A lot of feelings, a lot of them. Matt, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy a Sunday off. How about that? You get a Sunday off, and then we'll gear back up next week for the Jags.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be some better entertaining football on Sunday, and then we'll do it all again next week.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care, guys.
Matt Derrick, ChiefsDigest.com.
I talked to him last week about idiots in his Twitter mentions. I bet you they were even worse yesterday.
There were some wild takes on. You can just type anything into the old Bird app and it will appear.
Coming up, we'll talk Andy Reid. Sports Talk, hour number 3 here on this Friday. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a feel-good Friday. Think of how much football is coming up. We got the game of the week, the Lewis Toyota game of the week tonight, 7 o'clock on Country 106.9.
I'd be even more excited.
Hawks!
But I'm excited for that. I'll DVR that.
Cats tomorrow. 7
Cats.
a.m.
Yep, Dan, you and I may be making a trek over down to the Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
UTEP Northwestern tomorrow.
No one cares about that.
You're about to find out in about 15 minutes why someone is.
Absolutely not.
First NFL Sunday of the year.
Yeah.
Hope you got that honeydew list checked off because it's just straight football for 2 days.
No,
with a bunch of rivalry games.
Man, that sounds like a bunch of guys who don't have kids.
Maybe your kid should learn ball. I don't know.
My kids are 3 and 2.
Sounds like excuses.
When I was 3, I was reading the sports page every morning.
You weren't.
There's a picture.
3 and 2. No, trust me.
I learned the veer by 4 years old. What's your kid doing?
I don't even know what the veer is.
When I was 5, I was drawing up X's and O's. Daddy, why won't he throw to the slot receiver?
No, I'd be very excited. All of that sounds
Dad,
great.
why don't they simply run cover 3 match? None of these offensive principles are going to work, Dad.
I would be more on board tonight if one team didn't run the triple option.
This is going to be a blast. DeSoto's good.
And Rural's good.
And Rural's very good.
Yeah, no, that's going to be fun. The game will be fun. The handoff up the middle, handoff around the edge.
Unbelievably reductive.
Yeah. That's the way it is. That's the way it is.
Hate that take, Jake. Hate it so much.
You don't like my take? Okay. Let's get our survivor pick out of the way.
Let's do it.
All righty. Last year was kind of wild. You got bounced real early.
Yep.
Like real early.
Okay, well, hold on. Before we do this, we have to set a ground rule week 1 because I'm pretty sure we were changing rules by week 5 last year.
You get one mulligan.
Are we doing a mulligan?
Yes, you get a mulligan.
Yeah. All right.
And we are going to do this because I should have won on a technicality last year, but because I am such a nice guy that we let it slide. If we all have our mulligan, that is done. You get bounced out. Dan loses the game at noon, but my team's still playing at 3. I win. I was last man standing.
I don't think I agree. I think it should be by days, not by hours.
So then if
games get flexed.
What about the Monday night game then? Or are we going by week?
I would vote that we go by week.
Okay, I just want to know.
Yeah. Well, we got 3. We can have a unanimous vote here. My vote, all in favor of going by week, not by day. Say aye.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. All right.
That's technically not last man standing then. Survivor. I'm just letting you know.
We'll just say the Grim Reaper shows up midnight Tuesday.
Okay, I'm on board with that. All right. I'm on board with that. All righty. My survivor pick, I've got Baltimore taking over Houston. I think Baltimore's going to win. I don't know if you guys know that. I'm taking Baltimore.
I would assume so too. See, I think Baltimore's going to be good this year. I want to save them for a tougher matchup.
See, this is going to be good because my strategy is pick winners now.
Yeah,
I think picking winners is generally a good strategy
Pick winners
in a
now.
survivor pool.
You guys are going with the same team.
We are.
Commanders over the Cardinals. I mean, Josh Jobs has been on the Cardinals for 3 weeks.
Did you just say Josh Jobs?
I meant to say Dobbs. I might have
Okay.
slurred it.
I
I
was like,
apologize.
who's Josh Jobs?
I've been running around and doing a lot today. I'm still trying to catch up.
Let's go, Dobbs. Let's go, Cardinals. I've always been a Cardinal fan.
Oh, yeah.
This is not like throwing my weighty support behind Ron Rivera and Sam Howell.
Yeah.
This is more about, I think Arizona is just a toilet that is on fire.
I know precisely one Cardinal fan. I have met in person one in my entire life. We talked to Jeremy Werner earlier in the show. When I was an intern for Jeremy, it was for a radio station, not for 24/7. His co-host, Lon, again, great dude. he is a Cardinals football and Cardinals baseball fan. Big Southern Illinois in the 1970s energy.
Well, I didn't know you worked with Will Leach.
Yeah.
That's you asked me to name a Cardinals football fan. That's all I got for you is the founder of Deadspin.
Yeah, like I do not know any Cardinals fans. And I swear, all year, all calendar year, he's been like, I don't think I even like football, and the games haven't even started.
Alrighty, so we got Baltimore. You guys are taking the Commanders.
Wow, big weekend for the DMV.
Yep. My NFL picks, I like Jacksonville to cover the 4.5 over Indy, and San Fran with Bosa back to cover the 2.5 over Pitt. Who do you like, Dan?
I'm going the opposite there. You're giving me points with Mike Tomlin at home in week 1. They beat Cincinnati in a pretty similar spot last year. I think they're going to I didn't win that game outright, so I got Pittsburgh plus 2.5 over the Niners. And then I am actually tailing you on Jacksonville minus 4.5 over Indianapolis. I think it's going to be a really rough ride to start for the Colts and Anthony Richardson. And I think Jacksonville's good, so I think they're going to go and win handily.
What do you got in your NFL pick?
So I didn't touch Jacksonville because you guys are both already on it. And I wanted to take Pittsburgh, but also you guys are both on that game, so I figured I'd just steer clear and do my own thing. I got 2 underdogs, one on the road, one at home. Packers plus 1.5 against the Bears. I think it's 8 straight. Until the Bears can beat the Packers, I'm not going to pick them. And the Giants at home. Thank you, Dan. Corrected it in our notes. The Giants at home, 3.5 point dogs to the Cowboys. Okay. I'm not a Daniel Jones guy, but I'm also not a Dak guy. I think that's going to be a close game.
College football, I am worried about the Baylor Bears. I think Utah's good. Give me Utah.
Bill Gates was there today.
7 and a hook. So give me Utah. And
at Baylor, I should say.
You want to be the nail or the hammer? I am going with Slick Willie Fritz, and the Tulane taking +7 against Mississippi.
Tulane?
I love the Tulane pick. I really do. I think they might win that game outright. Yeah. I think they're genuinely good. I know Michael Pratt was limping around a little bit, their quarterback, but
he's always limping around. He's just permanently limping around.
For me, I've got Coach Prime laying 2.5 against the serial losers from Nebraska. This is not so much I now think Coach Prime is one of the best teams in the country. This is a bet against Nebraska, and this is a bet on the atmosphere. The Coach Prime fans are going to be rocking Folsom Field the way like you haven't seen it rock in 2 decades. So Coach Prime.
I think this one is the sneaky one. I think Nebraska, if they just run the ball, they got it. Nebraska's defense is pretty decent this year.
Mm-hmm.
I know Colorado's defense is trash.
This is true.
And they got one good guy on defense. I think if Nebraska just runs it and commits to the run, I think this is going to be an interesting.
I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Like I don't want any part of like the total here. I definitely think Nebraska can ugly it up.
Yeah,
but Colorado has more talent.
Here's the spin on what you just said, because I agree with you. How Nebraska keeps this close or pulls off the upset is by doing that.
I'm sorry, Coach Prime has more talent.
The spin on that is not focus on the run. It is do whatever you can to not have Jeff Sims throw the ball. That's, I think, how I would view that one.
So, yeah, I've got Coach Prime laying 2.5 at home. Like, the whole world's on Colorado, and that line isn't moving, which is a little bit of a concern. But still, I think they have more talent. The better quarterback, usually that matters. And they're at home. I've also got Boise State. You're giving me points with Boise State on the blue carpet. I know they got firebombed by Washington. I think that's more about Washington than it is about Boise State. I think the Broncos rebound plus 3.5 against UCF.
So many of those picks that we just went over, they're so like they all seem obvious to me. Like the Utah game, the Colorado game, the Tulane one, like those seem so obvious that I don't want to touch them because I'm scared, because that usually means
you're riding with you.
Yeah, all right,
Stanford.
You shouldn't give yourself a nickname, but I am going to nickname my picks. These are the dumpster juice picks of the week. These are disgusting. These are vile. Okay. And I admit that. These are nasty. Evanston, Illinois, tomorrow, UTEP giving 1.5 on the road. There is no such thing as home field advantage at Northwestern. Give me UTEP. Give me, what's his name? Garrett Harmison, quarterback for UTEP. No disrespect to my Alliance Township fellow alumnus, Ben Bryant. It's going to be bad for Northwest. I might just bet against them every week.
That might be smart.
And then the Coliseum, the longest running rivalry in the Pac-12. Stanford's getting 29.5 at USC. USC is going to score, probably at will for this game. Stanford, better offense than Nevada, probably on a similar plane to that of San Jose State. Stanford's actually got a real quarterback now, not Tanner McKee. Get Tanner McKee out of my face. I'm done with people lying to me.
Tanner McKee.
I'm done with people lying to me that Tanner
Ridiculous,
McKee was a good
right?
prospect.
Not good.
Stanford plus 29.5.
All right. So we got
I'm ill.
Oh, and then
Those
our
picks are gross.
So gross.
our wild card bet, which is any other bet that you kind of want. I might do this every single game this year. I'm not kidding you. This might be my over under every single game, and I'm gonna be crushed if when they have a bye week because I won't be able to bet it. It's Justin Jefferson over whatever yard that you want to get me. It's 89. Yes, he's getting over 89 yards.
What'd you have?
I've got the under in Wisconsin, Washington State. That opened at 55 and jumped up to 58.5. And that's a lot of movement for a total over the course of a week. But I will go the under there. I think that's going to be, I don't think it'll be super low scoring, but I do think that's going to be a tight game throughout. And I like the under 58.5.
Yeah, my total for the week also has moved a ton. Alabama and Texas opened at 64.5. It's now 53.5 for the total, and I'm still taking the under in that one. I don't believe in Jalen Milroe. I just do not.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe that Andy Reid can change?
No.
I'm worried this baby doesn't think that people can change.
Here's the thing about Andy Reid. Okay. Andy Reid is first ballot Hall of Famer. No question. Andy Reid can very well go down, because I don't think he's hanging it up anytime, as one of the 3 greatest coaches of all time in the NFL. I really do believe that. I do believe that. But there are some times where I just can't understand Andy Reid. That's what's frustrating. And we know it's not going to change, right? That's the thing. You know it's not going to change. So it's kind of like you're golfing and you don't have a 7-iron. You know, boy, it'd be nice to have a 7-iron sometimes, but you don't have one for some odd reason. You just you can't. You don't have a 7-iron in your bag. The 2 things that I wish Andy Reid would change is, 1, trust your offensive line. If you have a top 5 offensive line, quarterback sneak it with Mahomes. Quarterback sneak with Mahomes. You got to let that go, man. 2019 was a freak deal. Let it go. Stop doing the Blake Bell quarterback sneak. Or in this situation, you were all excited to, I'm going to get him. Fake the QB sneak, hand it off on an end around. When going horizontal to get 1 yard is not a good idea. Okay? Just hand it off to Pacheco, run it up the middle, or quarterback sneak it. Like, you got to stop doing that. That's not going to work. Stop.
Yeah.
Get some help.
It's just so frustrating.
It's just so. Do the Chiefs have a top 5 O-line?
I think so.
Do the
On
Chiefs have,
paper, yeah.
Then hand it off to Pacheco. I'm sick and tired of the O-line. You ready? You want me to get fired up? It's doing this. If the Chiefs have this good of offensive line and you're investing this much into the offensive line, then you should be able to just run a dive play to Pacheco and get a yard. End of discussion. Or stop being all, I can't do it because I've got scar tissue. You know, you got to be able to adapt in this situation. That's what's so frustrating to me about that. The other one that gets me so fired up is I had no problem kicking the field goal to go up 17-14. I did. You took the lead. This is a game that had a low scoring total. I had no problem with that, right? I really don't. Like, would I maybe have gone for it? Okay. But that one I can at least justify. You took the lead. Sometimes taking the lead is good, right? The second field goal is stupid.
That sounded like that Herm Edwards quote that's in Paul Meyerberg's Open.
Like,
most teams take the touchdown. Me, I was the opposite.
The second field goal is so dumb, and I cannot understand that. Congratulations, the Chiefs were up by 1 possession, and then they decided to be up by 1 possession. That makes no sense to me. Why would you do that? In fact, I think it actually hinders you. Here's the reason why. Now you're up by 6. That eliminates the field goal for the Detroit Lions. That means they're going to go for it on 4th down. It takes the, well, I can be now uber aggressive on 3rd down to set up 4th down. Now you get 4 downs to get 10 yards instead of 3, and it makes you more aggressive. The Lions didn't have to say on 2nd and 10, oh, what happens if it's 3rd and long? No, they said we get now 3rd down and we get 4th down because you had to have a touchdown to win the game. That is dumb. It is so stupid. That is what bothers me there is 2 very simple things can be changed. 1, quarterback sneak with Mahomes or hand it off to Pacheco. If they don't get it, at least you can then say, wow, our top 5 offensive line is buns. They're not any good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can at least say this. I went down with Mahomes doing it. That's also taking the ball out of Mahomes' hands, like you said, with Matty Derrick, right? What's wrong? What's wrong?
Nothing. I'm enjoying.
Why are you laughing?
I'm
right
enjoying your take.
I like how fired up you're being.
These are so simple stuff that 5-year-old Dan who's sitting there reading the sports page and talking, why are we running cover 3, match? You should be able to do this. Why?
Mm-hmm.
You're Andy Reid.
I think
what is happening?
For me, the argument about those 4th and short, 3rd and short plays, that is, well, we're not going to run quarterback sneak because of a freak incident that happened 4 years ago. Okay, you know what? Fine.
No, fine.
You got
Right,
let me get here.
Continue your book report.
You are still making yourself worse by not letting Patrick Mahomes make a play. So if you don't want him to sneak the ball, fine, throw it. Look at and I know the Chiefs aren't like digging through Football Outsiders trying to find like, ooh, what's our DVOA on 4th? Like, that's not what Andy Reid's doing during the week. But if you look at any sort of data, and the Chiefs have in-house stuff, whether you think the Chiefs are analytically minded or not, they've got a whole staff of people who are crunching numbers and looking at Excel sheets all day. Okay, that every team has that. All of them will tell you no team is better on offensive drop back passes of any variety than the Kansas City Chiefs, and specifically one individual player, Patrick Mahomes. So if you're scared of running the ball on 4th and 1, then throw it. Because at this point, you have enough informed feeling of data is just numbers. Data is experiences. Data is just things and events that have happened. You have enough data from preseason games this year, from regular season games this year, from regular season and postseason games in years past. You have more than enough data at this point to inform a decision about what you should do in that situation. The tight end direct snap, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked for a while now. Why not throw it? If you already think it's not going to work out, why not just throw the ball?
And I made this point last night on the post-game reaction YouTube video. The Chiefs are the only team in the league that doesn't take the free money that is the quarterback sneak in today's NFL, where you can line up and essentially push the quarterback across the line to gain. That's allowed now. That didn't used to be allowed. They had a rule against it. Now it's allowed.
Yeah.
Now you do it. You can get behind your quarterback. So, okay, fine. You want to put Blake Bell in the middle of the pile? Let Mahomes push him.
Yeah.
Run the sneak the way everybody else is running the sneak. You're the only team walking past that $5 bill that's sitting there on the sidewalk. You're the only team walking by. It is free money. It's free real estate. Take advantage, or don't, and keep frustrating people and losing games like this. It is infuriating. And last night it was in part the difference between winning and losing. And when you get into close games, you've got to convert 3rd and 1. You've got to convert 4th and 1 because other teams are going to go for it on the Chiefs because they know if we're going to beat Patrick Mahomes, we're going to do it with 7. We're going to do it with 3. We're going to go for it on these 3rd downs. We're going to go for it on these 4th downs. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl last year in large part because they were lethal on 3rd and short, 4th and short, because they ran the sneak better than anyone else.
What was it, 29 of 32 on 4th and 1 last year?
Something like
Unbelievable.
that. It's a cheat code. It's free real estate. Just take it. Just put somebody under center and give them a push. Let him follow the best center in the league for 3 feet and keep the drive alive. And it doesn't even matter. Okay, fine. Take Mahomes out of the game. Put Bell under center. The whole world can know it's coming if you run it the right way.
Everyone knows what the Eagles are doing.
Yes, and they don't stop it.
Andy Reid generally is smarter than other coaches, almost all the time. So there is a reason to think, well, we are smarter and the way we do things is better. I understand that. But we are at a crossroads here where unless you are just so stubborn it is blinding you, that you are not good enough at doing this thing. So why do you keep doing it when you've got proof something else would work better? That's the thing that really bothers me the most. It's going to be just Dan and I the rest of the way. We're still taking your texts, 785-272-9429. We're still taking your comments on YouTube as well. 580 Sports Talk. Damn it, Jake did it earlier. Now I did it too, using the old stuff.
Jar.
580 Sports Talk. We should have a jar until like our final show of the year. See what we put it in. 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. Go check us out. Live stream up right now. We'll have post-game stuff from all the games coming up this weekend as well. We have to get to a break. What is Wrong with You is coming up next. Cooper Beebe joins us later this hour on 580 Sports Talk. It's time to find this week's winner in What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. A couple news stories going head-to-head today as we try to take down the human hamster wheel. The gentleman who off the coast of Georgia, Tybee Island, Georgia, was going to walk, float, coast his way across the Atlantic Ocean all the way to England in a mesh metal canister with buoys attached to the end, with no room to store food or drinkable water or sunscreen or any of those other things you need when you're floating in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. He got just a few miles offshore before he was pulled in by the Coast Guard.
I'm beginning to wonder if maybe he just wanted to get his name in the paper, and this is how he was going to do it. Because he can't possibly have thought, hey, I'm going to strap some floaties to the Atmosphere from American Gladiators and take it across literally the Atlantic Ocean. Like, come on, man. You cannot be serious.
He has, again, been stopped for this 3 previous times.
He is one of the least serious people I think we've encountered on What Is Wrong With You.
That's certainly true, which is saying something. Once again, want to remind you that What Is Wrong With You is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, saving time, money, and material. So never settle when it comes to metal at Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. I don't remember whose turn it is for today, so
I'll go first.
All right, go for it.
I think it is my turn. Anyway, this one's been in the chamber all week. Had it actually submitted by someone on the text line, so shout out to you if that was you.
Thank you, text line.
But we are going to Nebraska, Lancaster County, where we meet a suspected drunken driver who called Nebraska law enforcement on himself. The man called 911 to report a driver who he thought was driving on the wrong side of the highway. The sheriff's office on Thursday released a video from the incident, which actually occurred back in March, along with audio from the driver's 911 call. When authorities arrived, it became clear that the caller himself was the one driving on the wrong side of the road and that he was drunk. In a recording of the 911 call, the driver says, "I'm on Highway 77 going north, and there's somebody that's on the wrong side of the road." He added that the other driver almost ran me off the road. "That was gnarly," he said. "That was like a lot." The video then shows the unidentified driver being pulled over by a police officer. The officer asks, "Do you know why I stopped you?" The driver admits, "Yeah, because I was on the wrong side of the road." When asked if there was a reason he was driving on the wrong side, he replied he must have missed an exit. The driver also confirmed he was the same person who had previously called 911. The driver had a blood alcohol content over twice the legal limits, and he was arrested.
This is a really funny story.
One of my favorite old bits, when I used to listen to the Jim Rome show,
Mhm.
And he would occasionally dig up like 911 calls
Yeah.
that were really funny. And he played a 911 call once, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I heard it. It was an old lady calling the police and reporting that someone really drunk driving down Cramden Road or whatever it was. And the officer said, "Can you see them?" And she said, "I am them." To which the dispatcher replied, "You am them?" So, and they got her to like pull over, pull into a parking lot, the whole thing. But this is what that reminds me of. You're calling and telling on yourself. "Hey, man, somebody driving on the wrong side of the road. Some jerk ass. He can't stay on the right side of the road, man. He almost hit me. That was gnarly."
I love that his excuse is he must have missed an exit. What exit flips you onto the wrong side of the road?
I don't know. I've never missed. I mean, I've missed some exits, but I've never missed an exit and ended up driving on the wrong side of the highway.
No, that's pretty funny. My story today is going to take us across the pond. The BBC employs a disinformation correspondent in an era. If you ever, follow the news, you might need to get your mental health checked. But a lot of talk about, and I hate this phrase, the fake news, the disinformation, the deep fakes, things like that. Well, the BBC hired a disinformation correspondent who has since been fired for lying from the irony department for today. The first, in fact, disinformation correspondent for the British Broadcasting Company has been caught in a lie. Mariana Spring, a fast-rising star at the BBC, embellished the truth on her resume while applying for a job before she joined the network in 2018. A British newspaper has seen emails between the woman, Mariana Spring, and Natalia Antilava, who's the editor of a U.S. publication called Coda Story. Spring was looking for work as a Moscow stringer and is reported to have said on her resume that she worked alongside former BBC Eastern Europe correspondent Sarah Rainsford. In her resume, it said, June 2018, reported on international news during the World Cup, specifically about Russia, with Sarah Rainsford. Unfortunately, that was proven to be wrong. Antilava, the woman she was trying to get a job with, checked in with the other reporter, Ms. Rainsford, who said, "Now, I've only ever met her in social situations." Spring then said it was awful misjudgment, but called herself a brilliant reporter. Antilava replied and said, "Telling me you're a brilliant reporter who exercises integrity and honesty when you have literally demonstrated the opposite was a terrible idea." So she ends up eventually getting a job at the BBC, where she has since won awards and has done a lot of reporting on things like conspiracy theories. Now the BBC dove back into her past and found out, hey, wait a minute, you're the one with the disinformation. Probably not a winner today, but I did think Disinformation Reporter Lies is a very funny title.
Very like state of the world, state of
yeah, no kidding.
State of things in 2023. She asked George O'Leary'd it a little bit.
Yeah, she did.
Can't do that.
The fact that he never coached a game at Notre Dame, like
that was grand opening, grand closing. Like they found out his inconsistencies on his resume, and did he lose his job faster than Mike Price lost his at Alabama? Because neither of them ever got to coach a game. That was around the same time. We had some good coaching scandals in the late 90s, early 2000s. That give or take that era.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's rolling, baby.
All right, so our winner for today is our drunk driver here.
I agree.
That is very funny.
Not beating human hamster wheel. Human hamster wheel. He's our first winner of September. He's going to be a strong contender at the end of this month. I can tell you right now.
That is a dang good story, and it is our winner today and for the week. The human hamster wheel survives the week on What Is Wrong With You, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. Coming up next, we'll hear from Kansas State starting offensive guard, maybe the best guard in the country, Cooper Beebe, right here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dorzinski and Dan Lucero here with you this afternoon as we now welcome in one of the best interior offensive linemen, and don't need to throw the qualifier in there, one of the best offensive linemen in America, Cooper Beebe of the Kansas State Wildcats. K-State coming off of a big win in week 1 over SEMO, getting ready for week 2 coming up this weekend, a game you can hear right here on 580 WIBW. But Cooper, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and the first thing I've got for you is just how good did it feel to finally get back out there on the field, to get hit by someone who's not one of your own teammates, and to get the season underway this past Saturday?
Yeah, first off, just thanks for having me. And it's definitely a good feeling. You get tired of, beating up on your own players for so long. It's good to finally hit fresh meat.
We were talking last week with Hayden Gillum, one of your teammates, and I think using the phrase fresh meat is actually perfect for what I wanted to just ask about. We were talking to him about beef and about the NIL deal you guys have with Charlie Hustle and just about the hype that this offensive line has gotten. First of all, have you noticed that, and have you kind of reveled in it a little bit that the offensive linemen have been so hyped up for your program? And two, what do you think of the way you guys played as an overall unit in the opener?
No, it's definitely pretty cool because, usually the O-line is usually a group that gets a lot of the hate most of the time on teams. So just to see all the love and support, it's just a tremendous feeling. We have all the, shirts are selling out. Everybody's getting hats. It's just cool to see the love and support. In terms of the game, I think
personally, I think there's a lot to improve on. I thought we started out, a little slow, just based on, some of the experience we had. I thought we should start a little bit better. But as the game went on, I thought we kind of found our groove and started turning on, just trying to find, we had a lot of rotation of players and just trying to find, who are the top 5 guys right now. So, that chemistry was a little bit off, but I think we kind of found our groove there towards the second half.
Do you ever feel that it's a little unfair that sometimes the offensive linemen, like you said, are the guys that get a lot of the hate and maybe not all the positive recognition? People joke all the time, fans or people outside football joke about, nobody knows who a starting guard is until they do something wrong. Do you feel like that's a little bit unfair for how important your role is?
I think so. And but when you sign up to be an offensive lineman, you kind of just know that's part of the deal. And, the average fan's not, like you said, is not going to know who the offensive guard is. You'd be surprised. There's still a lot of people that don't know who I am. But yeah, it's kind of unfair, but it comes with the job. You do it and you really don't mind it. It's just something that is what it is.
We're chatting with Cooper Beebe, the standout offensive lineman for the Kansas State Wildcats here on 580 Sports Talk. And we should be fair here to you, Cooper, because there are plenty of people all over football, pro, college fans, media, etc., who know exactly who you are. Outland Trophy watch list for this year, along with other watch lists, captain, preseason All Big 12, all sorts of honors. I know that for a lot of players, you don't like to listen to the outside noise, and you just try to focus game by game, week by week, etc. But does it give you any sort of encouragement? Does it make you feel positive to know that people are talking about you as a pro prospect or as one of the best linemen in the conference in the country? Do you hear those and at least feel something positive, or do you try to even tune out some of the good stuff?
I even try to tune out, some of the good stuff because, to me, all the preseason stuff is just hype. If I don't go out and, do what I do, the preseason accolades mean nothing. And, for a lot of people, those preseason accolades make dudes get complacent. And, I don't want to be one of those guys that, that thinks they've arrived already. So I kind of tune it out. You obviously hear it. It's hard to ignore, but, I just know I need to go out and do my best game in, game out, and then let the awards sort themselves out at the end of the season.
Our guest is Cooper Beebe, offensive lineman for the Kansas State Wildcats, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. Cooper, you had a new link in the chain on Saturday. Carver Willis got the start at right tackle. Christian Duffy, the 5th of the 5 returning starters for you guys on the offensive line, dealing with a bit of an injury, so he wasn't out there with you. It was Carver Willis getting the start at right tackle. When there is a new starter, when somebody else comes into the line, an experienced group, and has to pull on the rope with you, how do you help that player get comfortable? How do you encourage that player? How do you build that player up to make sure that he is a link in the chain that's just the same as the one before it?
It's just all about encouragement and calming him down. I can speak from experience. That was his first career start, and I know how nerve-wracking that can be. My first career start, I gave up 2 sacks, and it was a tough day for me. So I know the nervousness about it. You're very tense, but it all has to base around encouragement and just building confidence in them that you're out here for a reason. Like, you can do it. So it's all just predicated on building up with good talk and good encouragement. Really.
You're a little preoccupied during each offensive snap with carrying out your own assignment, obviously, but maybe when you get a chance to look at film or see highlights, you see how those skill guys are operating behind you, going through the holes that you create, or setting up big pass plays with the time that you and your partners up front provide, quarterback Will Howard. Well, what did you think of how the offense, the skill position players performed? What was your evaluation of the way they came out of week one?
I thought they did really well. One of the things that SEMO was going to try to do was stop the run. And I think that's what, helped our pass game so much. We had, open receivers all over the place, RJ, Sino. Some of those guys, got a lot of receptions and, they were open all day. And then once we started hitting them with the pass, they kind of loosened up the run, and you saw Trayshawn and DK get after it. So, I was pretty impressed. We had like over 500 something yards of total offense. So as offensive linemen, you got to be proud of that.
We talked to Hayden Gillum, your center, last week, and one thing that he brought up was going into a game week against an FCS opponent, not taking them for granted. This is 2 years in a row you guys have not just beaten your FCS opponent, but you've shut them out. What does that say about your preparation for a game week like this and being able to do your job and execute at a high level and give that opponent the respect it deserves?
I think it's just understanding, in the scope of college football, it doesn't matter, what conference you're in, if you're FCS, FBS, man, if you don't show up each Saturday or whenever you play, you can get beat. It doesn't matter, what it says on their jersey. If you don't prepare like you need to, and you don't get ready like you need to, you can get beat on any given weekend. And that's, something that's just, part of our culture. We don't overlook anybody. It doesn't matter who they are. We're going to prepare just like we're preparing for the best team in the country.
We've got a few more questions for Cooper Beebe, the starting offensive guard for the Kansas State Wildcats here on 580 Sports Talk. And first, Cooper, I wanted to get to this coming weekend. You guys take on Troy, a team that has had a lot of success over time in the Sun Belt Conference. They're well coached. They're a tough team. Even when the record doesn't necessarily show it, that's been a very strong program out of the state of Alabama in recent years. So what do you know about this Troy group, and what are some of those things you noticed in the film from week one that you're hoping to improve upon going into week two?
We know this Troy team coming in is a tremendous team. You talk about a team, they had 12 wins last year. Should have been 13. They lose on a Hail Mary. And I think one of their strengths of their team is their defense, and it's definitely going to be a challenge for us, especially up front. They have some pretty good interior guys and a pretty good edge rusher. But we're going to prepare like we always do. We know, like you said, it doesn't matter who you play. You can't take these dudes lightly, and they have had a lot of success, and they continue to have a lot of success. So just knowing going in, we gotta learn from SEMO. Shore up a couple things. Whether that's technique wise or little small details, and get ready to play Saturday.
You mentioned blocking for Treshaun Ward as well as DJ Giddens a few moments ago, and Ward obviously came in with a lot of fanfare, the transfer from Florida State, and he had a very strong debut for you guys, obviously. But I'm curious about DJ Giddens, who, just like you, is a Kansas kid. He started Junction City before coming to K-State, and you've really gotten to see him develop into the player he is now and gotten to see him go from little-used role player to now a much bigger role in this offense. What have you noticed about him, the way he's grown up, and what's the difference between blocking for DJ and blocking for Treshaun?
It's just so cool to see, like you said, when you see DJ, he's used to being a role player, and now, he's one of the guys. It's just fun to see, and something that I appreciate about him is just how he prepares, day in, day out. And it doesn't matter, if we're going in helmets or shoulder pads, he's going to go 100%. He's going to be looking to run dudes over. And it's just so fun to watch, and just he's a super intelligent player. Just one of the things that I appreciate about him is just the way he picks up pass rushes. It's something that some of the younger, inexperienced running backs tend to have a hard time with, and I think he's picked up on that pretty well.
Last two things we've got for you then, Cooper. One, speaking of younger players on this K-State team, someone that pretty darn well is on the roster this year, your brother, freshman Camden Beebe. What is it like to get to be teammates now with your brother?
No, it's super cool. To have a family member on the team is just an unbelievable experience. Usually you're away from your family, the majority of the time, but to have a family member here, is pretty special. And, I'm honored because, I get to teach him everything I know, and, hopefully, he turns out to be a better player than I am. But, there's definitely a little fine line. You don't want to give him all your attention, but you still want to be a brother. So there's definitely still a fine line with that.
When he was picking his school to go to, when he was going through the recruiting process, did you give him an extra strong little push that, hey, K-State's the right place. It's right for me. It'll be right for you. Keep it in the family. Or did you pretty much give him the space to make that decision for himself?
I gave him the space to make his own decision. Just like my older brother at Minnesota, he never pressured me to go there. He wanted me to make my own decision. So I, did the same thing with him. I wasn't going to try to persuade him or anything. And if he thought K-State was right for him, then he would come here. If he didn't, he'd go somewhere else. And, luckily he thought K-State's, the right place for him, and he's here now.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this one, Cooper. When we talked to Hayden last week, we asked him, what do you listen to? What is that last song, the most important song on your iPhone, on your whatever, going into the game? What's the most important song you listen to as you're warming up? And he said he's not a big music guy before games, but if he's going to listen to something, he's going to listen to some of the classics, some of the old school Coach Snyder music that used to play at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. So for you, what is that number one song on the playlist as you're getting ready to run out of the tunnel with your guys?
Oh, wow. It kind of depends on, if we're home or away. If we're in an away team, one of the things I like to listen to is the Wabash, just because, that's the kind of manifest touchdowns, when we're at an away stadium. Usually when I'm here at home, though, I don't necessarily have one. I kind of just listen to the music that's playing in the stadium, and then that kind of gets me ready to go.
Cooper Beebe, he is one of the best offensive linemen in the country, an anchor for the Kansas State Wildcats up front, and he's kind enough to join us this week as K-State gets ready for Troy right here on 580 Sports Talk. And, of course, you'll be able to hear that game right here on 580 WIBW this weekend. Cooper, thank you so much for taking the time for us, man. We really appreciate it. Congrats on the win in Week 1, and best of luck to you and the rest of the Cats coming up in Week 2.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Again, that's Cooper Beebe, gracious enough to join Brendan and I earlier this week, take some time to talk K-State football. Love talking to the linemen. We've gotten to visit with a couple of not just Kansas kids, but offensive linemen so far this year for Kansas State, and always appreciate the time that they were able to grant us for that. Cooper Beebe joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero here, solo the rest of the way, as we've all gone our separate ways for now, but we're all going to meet up a little later on. 580 Sports Talk at the stadium tonight. It's the broadcast crew for the Lewis Toyota Game of the Week. Jake Labatt on the sidelines, and yours truly in the booth alongside Brendan Dworzinski as Washburn Rural plays host to DeSoto. We got a 7 o'clock kick for that over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. Pregame coverage at 6:45, leading up to the 7 o'clock kickoff for the Lewis Toyota Game of the Week. So Brendan is off to go set that up, which means I have got you solo the rest of the show today. And we are going until 5:30, at which point we hand things off to the Royals Radio Network for Royals baseball tonight. Royals are back in action, opening a 3-game series in the Great White North tonight against the Toronto Blue Jays. And the pregame coverage gets started at 5:30. So coming up in the final half hour of 580 Sports Talk today, we'll have some 580 Sports Talk headlines, including setting the table for your sports weekend, tell you about the high school slate in Shawnee County tonight, and also, obviously, the college football slate. Let you know what's going on there. Some other headlines that we will get to as well. Joe Burrow got a big bag. Maybe you missed that because the Bengals news dumped it right after the kickoff of Chiefs-Lions last night. So we'll talk about that. An awkward situation between the Washington Nationals and an all-time franchise great. Get to that if time allows as well. And a final word about the Chiefs. Again, this has been a very panic-free episode of 580 Sports Talk today as it pertains to the Chiefs and their 1-point loss to the Detroit Lions in their season opener last night. And I'll explain in the final word once for all why this has been a panic-free zone, a trauma-free zone as it pertains to the Chiefs and their future outlook for this coming season. So all that's coming up in the next hour. Again, if you missed any of the show to date, you can check out our podcast page, 580WIBW.com, the podcast tab. Click on 580 Sports Talk, or you can check out the video. We're on YouTube Live right now. Hi, guys. And you can rewind while we're live and catch up to any of the parts you might have missed when we previewed KU Illinois tonight with Jeremy Werner of 24/7 Sports and Illini Inquirer. When we further broke down the Chiefs game with Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider, in the 3 o'clock hour. The conversation we just had with Cooper Beebe. You can rewind and listen to all of that back, and we've got the hour-by-hour breakdowns on the podcast page. So, one more half hour of the program to go. I'd be flattered if you hung around for it. Dan Lucero taking you the rest of the way on this edition of 580 Sports Talk here on 580 WIBW. Let's get it. Final half hour of the day, final half hour of the week here on 580 Sports Talk. I am Dan Lucero. Jake LeBon and Brendan Dworzinski have scattered like dust in the wind, but we'll be hearing from both of them, and you'll be hearing from more of me on tonight's Lewis Toyota Game of the Week 2 of the high school football season, about which more in a bit. But this is 580 Sports Talk, and we are taking you up until 5:30 here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. That's when we hand you off to the Royals Radio Network, who I hope all remembered their passports because they are in Canada this weekend as they take on the Toronto Blue Jays. First of the 3-game set tonight. Yusei Kikuchi, and I say hello. Yusei Kikuchi is the starting pitcher for the Blue Jays tonight. Colin Snyder scheduled as the opener for the Royals this evening. First pitch, 6:07 Central Time. Again, we'll hand it off to the pregame coverage at 5:30. That's why we are short in this final half hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us. If you want to make your voice heard, get in on the program, you're invited, encouraged to do so over this final half hour. The text line is open as always, 785-272-9429. And you can hit us on the YouTube comments as well. We are live on YouTube. Hello, everyone. YouTube.com/@580 Sports Talk. The channel is 580 Sports Talk. You search for 580 Sports Talk, subscribe to 580 Sports Talk, and watch 580 Sports Talk on YouTube, either live or archived. And check out all of our other video content too, including the video we did last night. Brendan and I is their instant reaction to the Chiefs losing to the Lions in the NFL kickoff game last night. We did really good live numbers, and last I checked, we were over 500 views just for that video, including one commenter who left a lot of comments, lots of them really mean about the Chiefs, and then concluded by saying, "Great show, guys." So thank you for that. We appreciate you being nice to us, even if calling Patrick Mahomes a fraud is a wild take. But we appreciate you watching, no matter what takes you might leave in the comments. So, again, we are on YouTube, 580 Sports Talk. Final hour means we open things up with 580 Sports Talk headlines. Just want to make sure you know the games that are coming up this weekend. Start with the high school sports schedule. Again, our Lewis Toyota High School Football Game of the Week tonight over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. Brendan Dworzinski on the call. Yours truly in the booth. Jake LeBon on the sideline tonight. So it's a 580 Sports Talk broadcast crew tonight. We'll have a good time with that for sure. Pregame at 6:45, kickoff at 7 from Bowen Glaze Stadium at Washburn Rural High School, where the Junior Blues take on the DeSoto Tigers in a battle of 1-0 teams. Should be a good one tonight. We hope you'll check out the broadcast again on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. As it pertains to other high school action in the area, Topeka High was in action last night. They played at Hummer Sports Park, lost to a very good Manhattan team, 55-19. We'll say this for the Trojans, though, and Carlos Kelly's team. They have been, on the scoreboard at least, far more competitive against a really tough first 2 weeks of their schedule, Mays and Manhattan, than they were last year. So hopefully that's a sign of some steps being taken forward for the Trojans. They've got another Thursday nighter next week against Liberal at Hummer Sports Park, and that's a game we're going to have for you right here on 580 WIBW, but we'll give you all those details next week. Other games in the area tonight, Hayden Silver Lake. We had a titanic matchup of small school powers, that is, at Hayden tonight. Hayden beat Silver Lake pretty soundly at Silver Lake last year. We'll see if the Eagles have revenge on their minds. Both of those teams 1-0. Highland Park is at home on the turf at Hummer Sports Park. They take on Kansas City Schlegel in Meadowlark Conference action. Seaman is at home looking for a 2-0 start, and they'll get it. They play Kansas City Turner. That should be a fairly routine and probably running clock victory in the second half for the Vikings. Shawnee Heights, an impressive 1-0 after they pounded Piper last week. They're at Lansing, who is 0-1. Topeka West 0-1. They are at Leavenworth tonight. That's another United Kansas Conference contest. Rossville is at home against Riley County. Great Mid-East League action on Highway 24 tonight. And Care Paravel Latin is at home looking for their first win. They played Axtell, the defending 8-man 2 champions, tough last week, but ultimately fell in defeat. They will take on Donovan West in 8-man tonight. Also tonight, there is college football in Lawrence. Kansas Jayhawks and the Illinois Fighting Illini. Big game for both teams. We have called this on this program one of the swing games for KU this year. If they win this game, you feel really good that they're going to eventually get to a bowl. If they lose this game, they're going to have to scratch and claw their way back to bowl eligibility. Kansas is a 3.5-point favorite. According to most sports books, the consensus is about 3.5 points. That line hasn't budged much. If you're looking for a headline for that one, Jalen Daniels will start. That has been confirmed by multiple sources, including Pete Thamel of ESPN, that Jalen Daniels, after not playing in the opener, will get the start tonight against the Fighting Illini. Kansas State in action tomorrow. It's bright and early, an 11 a.m. kick at Bill Snyder Family Stadium as they take on the Troy Trojans. The line for this game has moved a lot today, interestingly. You don't usually see this kind of line movement on a Friday unless Vegas knows something we don't. But K-State has been a 16.5 to 17-point favorite most of the week. They are down now to a 14.5-point favorite, at least on one particular sports book, FanDuel to be exact. So K-State still resounding favorites, but the expected margin a little slimmer this afternoon than it was 24 hours ago. 11 a.m. kickoff at Bill Snyder Family Stadium tomorrow as Cats look to go to 2-0. Pre-game coverage at 9 a.m. right here on 580 WIBW FM 104.9 as Cats take on the Trojans. Let's get to some more traditional headlines. Actually, you know what? I was going to do this, and I forgot, and I want to do it still. Obviously, it's an NFL Sunday, first one of the year. Both of the networks will be showing double headers, so you'll have a choice of games, one on CBS and one on Fox in both windows. If you're hearing this in the chances are you're in the Kansas City or you're in the Topeka or you're in the Wichita TV market. So your early game on CBS, you'll get to see Cincinnati and Cleveland. More about Cincinnati's star quarterback here in just a moment. The Cincinnati-Cleveland game is your choice on CBS, while the Fox early game will be San Francisco at Pittsburgh. The late games, this is where there's a bit of a difference. On CBS, if you have Kansas City or Topeka local channels, your local game is Philadelphia at New England. But if you're far enough west of us to get, or south of us, I suppose, to get Wichita local channels, Wichita CBS, I guess that would be KWCH, I think is the CBS affiliate there. They will be showing the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. But if you get WIBW TV or you get, I think it's KCTV5 is the CBS affiliate in Kansas City, then you will be seeing Philadelphia and New England in the late window on CBS. The late game on Fox, for everybody who can hear this, is Green Bay at Chicago. If I wanted to see the Rams and Seahawks on TV, I'm either have to go to a sports bar or drive to Boise. One of those is closer. Well, I guess I'll figure it out. Obviously, the primetime game Sunday night is Dallas at the Giants. So that's what's on tap for your football weekend. Now, let's get into some headlines, shall we? We'll start with the big headline that you might have missed if you were really dialed into the Chiefs game, because this news dropped right after kickoff. I think it was the first offensive series of the game that I saw this float across my social media timelines. Joe Burrow is now the highest paid player in the history of the National Football League. Burrow has reached an agreement with the Bengals on a 5-year, $275 million extension. I'll spare you the math. That's $55 million per year. Also includes $219.01 million guaranteed. He is the highest player now in the history of the NFL. That guarantee is the second highest in NFL history. Of course, Deshaun Watson broke the curve for everybody. The nasty man got $230 million guaranteed. Joe Burrow, $219.01, well surpassing Justin Herbert, who got $193.7 million guaranteed when he signed his extension earlier this offseason. Burrow expects to play on Sunday when the Bengals are at the Browns. He did have that calf injury earlier in camp, but he has been practicing, and all systems are go for Burrow, and he is much, much wealthier than he was about 24 hours ago. So that was the big football news that did not take place on the field last night. And Joe Burrow got his bag. There was never a doubt he was going to. With this reporting, or with this news, came some reporting that, and I feel like most people probably understood that this would be true, that this would be the case, just logistically speaking. But a lot of rumors going around and sourcing going around that this means this is probably the end of the line for T. Higgins in Cincinnati. Higgins becomes a free agent at the end of this year, and there's just not enough cash in the banana stand. The bottom line is you can only give so many players so much money in a salary cap sport. And with Burrow getting the market-setting deal at quarterback, and with Jamar Chase being a higher long-term priority for the Bengals than T. Higgins, it seems likely that Higgins will play out his rookie deal and then be one of the most highly coveted free agents to hit the market next year. That hasn't been confirmed. Obviously, the Bengals would never say that publicly, but that also feels just logistically correct, that if they're going to pay Burrow this much money and they're going to pay Jamar Chase eventually a whole lot of money, there's just not enough left over to pay everybody. It's how the salary cap makes you work. So keep in mind for next offseason that T. Higgins is going to get paid by somebody. Somebody is going to give him a lot of money. A couple of other stories I want to get to before we wrap up headlines here on 580 Sports Talk. As Vance points out in the YouTube comments, it's a race weekend in Kansas. If you are motorsports inclined, the Xfinity Series is in Kansas, and so too is the start of the NASCAR playoffs. The Hollywood Casino 400 takes place this weekend. There's the Xfinity race on Saturday, and then the NASCAR Cup Series is on Sunday. The second race in the playoff series after the playoffs opened at Darlington. They still call that, Vance, tell me in the YouTube comments if you're still listening, they still call that race the Southern 500? I sure hope they do. I'm familiar with the Darlington Southern 500. I'm sure it is sponsored by something ridiculous now because everything is, but I remember that race as the Southern 500. You can tell me it's called whatever, but I will always know it as the Southern 500. But anyway, Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway also going on this week. I'm sure the folks at Kansas Motor Speedway were quite pleased to know that they would be on a Sunday in September and that the Chiefs would not be on that same Sunday. And they don't have to battle for the affection, the attention, the entertainment dollar in the greater Kansas City area on that Sunday. So want to get to that. Thank you, Vance, for reminding me of that. Two other stories. First, it is getting ugly between the Washington Nationals and probably the greatest pitcher they've had since they became the Washington Nationals, Steven Strasburg. We mentioned Strasburg's pending retirement when it was announced a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, Strasburg's never been able to recover from thoracic outlet syndrome. He's only pitched in 7 or 8 big league games since he was the World Series MVP in 2019 and received a sizable contract extension after the fact due to injuries. And this year, after not pitching at all any level, he decided he's going to hang it up. So Steven Strasburg is set to retire, and on Saturday, there was supposed to be a press conference at which Strasburg would announce his retirement and the Nationals would retire his number. Last night, it was reported that that press conference would no longer be happening. And the reason has to do with money. Namely, the money still owed to Strasburg on that 7-year contract extension that he signed after 2019. He's got money left over on that deal. They paid him $35 million to pitch or to not pitch, I suppose, this year. And there is about $110 million left still on the contract. And at first, the Nationals were inclined to pay all of that to Steven Strasburg. And now, for whatever reason, they are less inclined to pay Steven Strasburg all that money not to pitch for them. And so we have a dispute, and so we're not going to have a retirement ceremony, and we're not going to have any warm and fuzzies, and things are probably going to get pretty ugly between a franchise and one of its championship-winning heroes. The Nationals right now are in a spot where they are just not paying big league talent anymore. They've decided to totally go the austerity route. They traded Juan Soto last year rather than try and make a good faith effort to sign him to a long-term contract extension that was worth what Soto is worth. They have slashed their scouting in recent weeks. They fired like a dozen scouts, and they're trying to sell the team right now. The Lerner family is, and the Lerners are saying that, oh, we're having to write personal checks to cover the team's operations, which, oh, boo-hoo, you have to use your own money to operate the business that you own. Oh, no, I'm so sad for you. It's really bad situation in Washington right now, and now it's going to get really ugly with a guy who should just be a franchise hero that they celebrate, and he earned that money. I mean, those World Series memories, that World Series MVP, that's priceless. And when you pay a player, there is the understood risk that that player might get hurt. And you still owe him that money, or at least a pretty substantial chunk of it. So I'm sure there'll be some sort of settlement reached in the end, but this was just optically really, really bad for the Washington Nationals. One other story to get to here on our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Maybe you saw this morning. For the second straight time, Team USA will not win the Basketball World Cup, FIBA's World Cup of Basketball. The United States lost in the semifinal round to Germany in the Philippines this morning, 113-111. The United States trailed by double figures for a good chunk of the fourth quarter, rallied back late, but ultimately fell short and lost to Germany. Now, one glance at Team USA's roster would tell you the obvious thing, that this is not exactly the A team that we sent to as a country to this event. And in fact, sent a very small team that Germany essentially devoured on the glass and in the paint because they were bigger. They had like legitimate NBA big men and big men who play in really good leagues in Europe. And the United States had one true center on the roster and didn't play him. That was a rookie center in the NBA, Walker Kessler, who's a good player, but they chose not to play him. They went small. Small ball is good enough to get into the semifinals. Small ball was not good enough to beat Germany. So every time Team USA does not win an international basketball competition, it's a crisis because we're supposed to win those. Two things can be true at once. Number one is, yes, we are not sending our best players. And number two is, as ever, the gap continues to close between the best players from other countries and the best players from the United States. It is no longer true that Team USA can send a C team or a D team, which essentially they did to this World Cup, and walk through the field. Can't do that anymore. Those days are over. So either send an A team or as close to one as you can possibly send, or figure something else out. Because there are lots of other disadvantages that Team USA has going into this event. Their pro league doesn't play international rules. They're playing against players who are much more familiar with FIBA rules than they are. And that makes a big difference. So that's our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We're going to take one quick break, come back with a final word, and wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk right after this. Walking off and wrapping up this Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word on a day after a Chiefs defeat. For the first time, the Chiefs are 0-1 in the Patrick Mahomes era. It should not be a surprise that the Chiefs lost an early season game because they have typically lost early season games under Andy Reid and with Patrick Mahomes. The shock of last night was seeing the Chiefs look so disorganized and so seemingly unable to sustain offensive success, given what we have typically seen and what we laid out for you on yesterday's show under Andy Reid in season openers. One of Andy Reid's great stocks in trade has always been his ability with extended time to prepare to get the absolute best out of his teams, particularly his offenses. That was not in evidence last night. What we saw instead, lots of sloppiness, lots of mistakes, miscommunications on routes being run, and oh yeah, so many drops. It's going to take Kadarius Toney in particular a very long time to live down his performance last night. That being said, the Chiefs are still 64-17 all-time under Patrick Mahomes. With Mahomes as their starter. They still have Andy Reid, a Hall of Famer, and a two-time champion as their head coach. Sometimes you have to trust the larger sample size. We have a large sample size with this Chiefs organization that says they're going to bounce back just fine. And I would bet on that happening starting next Sunday against Jacksonville. And I would bet on that happening over the long haul once the Chiefs have two of their three best players back. You take the two of the three best players away from any team, they might find it hard too. And ultimately, the Chiefs did last night against a Lions team that's going to be good. It's not a terrible loss. It's a disappointing loss. It's frustrating. You hate to start 0-1. It sucks. No worse record than 0-1 because then you wonder, oh my gosh, are we bad? Trust the larger sample size. The Chiefs are going to be fine. Just got to get the jugs machine out and practice catching the old pigskin this next week and change and hope that Travis Kelce is back for the Jacksonville game. That's going to do it for 580 Sports Talk today. For Jake LeBon, for Brendan Dworzinski, I am Dan Lucero. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today and throughout the week. We'll be back on Monday at 2. Until then, Royals baseball up next.